O eternal and almighty God, from whom all power and wisdom come, we are assembled here before thee to frame such laws as may tend to the welfare and prosperity of our province. Grant, O merciful God, we pray thee, that we may desire only that which is in accordance with thy will, that we may seek it with wisdom and know it with certainty and accomplish it perfectly, for the glory and honor of thy name and for the welfare of all our people. Amen. We acknowledge we are gathered on Treaty 1 territory and that Manitoba is located on the treaty territories and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Anishin, Inuak, Dakota Oate, Dene Sulene, and Nehithowag nations. We acknowledge Manitoba is located on the homeland of the Red River Métis. We acknowledge northern Manitoba includes lands that were and are the ancestral lands of the Inuit. We respect the spirit and intent of treaties and treaty making and remain committed to working in partnership with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. Good afternoon, everybody. Please be seated. The Honourable Member for Dawson Trail.
I'd like to raise a point of order.
The Honourable Member for Dawson Trail on a point of order.
Madam Speaker, I rise today with a heavy heart to raise this particular point of order. I will explain why now is the right time. It is no secret that this place can be toxic and extremely hard on one's mental health. I have witnessed day after day sitting here, whether through Zoom or in person, a degree and a lack of decorum that can be described as a schoolyard full of bullies. I've witnessed people yelling across the aisle at one another, mainly because one member may not agree with the other's opinion or agenda. To this, I would like to remind my colleagues that we were not elected for our own personal opinions, but rather to represent our constituents and try to get them the answers regardless of how they vote. And often we forget three simple things that we should ask ourselves when making any decisions in this chamber. Who did we help today? Who did we hurt? And who did we forget? This morning I sat in an event hosted by Rob Nash and his project, and something powerful hit me. When he said, it's a simple word that can push someone over the edge, someone who has been suffering in silence. It hit me hard. Sorry. As I've still been struggling in my own journey and whether I really want to be part of this place anymore. In that moment, Rob said, you are here and you have a purpose. And that solidified my decision that I'm in the right place and I'm doing the right job. If I don't speak up, then who will? I will continue to do my best to represent my constituents and Manitobans, as well as try to hear one another in this chamber and remind us that we cannot pick and choose who we represent in Manitoba, but we choose to do our best, and our best should be not tearing each other down. As we hit the doors before this election, I would encourage voters to take a look at our behavior and your candidates and ask if they're knocking one another down, or if they're here to hear you and do what's best for all Manitobans. I can truly say I want to be an example of someone who listens and does not knock others down because of their opinions, does not match necessarily my own. I'm not here to be an activist, but rather a legislator that looks out for all of Manitoba.
I would indicate to the member and thank him for bringing those powerful words forward. Although that is not a point of order, it is a good point that he is making today. And as I have said many times, decorum in this House is very important. Politics is very fragile right now, not only here, but in Canada and across the world. So we need to be the ones that elevate that debate in this House. We are placekeepers. We are not here because necessarily to represent just ourselves. We are placekeepers for future politicians that will come here. We have a job to do, and the member has raised many good points, many of which I have raised over and over again, and the reminder today is a healthy reminder. So I will thank the member for his words, and I am going to wish him the very best. Mental health challenges is something that I have taken very seriously in my role. And in the Assembly, we have tried to make it an important issue that we always address amongst our staff. Mental health challenges are one of the biggest challenges of our time in many different ways. And it's not always easy for somebody to come forward and speak out, but it is time to end the stigma. And by doing what he is doing, he is working towards that process. And to anybody in this House that has been struggling with some mental health issues, the message was important today. And I do hope that anybody that does have some problems will seek help. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength that you have the courage to do that. And so I thank the member for raising that today and reinforcing the comments that I have made a number of times in this House, and asking for more civility towards and respect towards each other. So I thank the member for those comments. The Honourable Member for St. Boniface?
Just on a brief point of order, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for St. Boniface on a point of order?
Doug, I just wanted to recognize there was an accident today in St. Boniface at Fort Gibraltar. A number of individuals were injured. A platform collapsed. There apparently are some quite serious injuries. At least 17 children were there and a teacher. So I'm hoping that all of us can come together and wish our best wishes to everyone who was harmed, and a speedy recovery to all involved. Thank you.
And the Honourable First Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
On the same point of order?
On the same point of order, I was going to bring this subject up, as I'm sure the Leader of the Opposition was going to as well during question period, Madam Speaker, but certainly our hearts go out to the students, to the teachers, and to the families affected by this morning's horrible accident that took place at Fort Gibraltar. I do know that Shared Health will be going out at 2 o'clock today with an update. There were 16 children involved in the accident and 1 adult as well, Madam Speaker. And certainly our hearts go out to them. They have all gone to the hospital. We'll get an update on that. I want to thank all of the first responders who helped out on the scene and helped these individuals get to hospital. And I think, Madam Speaker, this is one of those moments where all of us can gather together and come together as Manitobans and share our support for these children, for their families, for the community at St. John's Ravenscourt as well, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on the same point of order?
Yes.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
As a parent and as a Manitoban, this is one of those moments that really clarifies things and tugs at the heartstrings. And so I join the Premier as well as the Leader of the Manitoba Liberals in sending our deepest concern, our thoughts, and our prayers for recovery for everybody affected by this terrible tragedy at Fort Gibraltar. It's tough not to empathize and see yourself in the shoes of those families, which are certainly very concerned and impacted by today's events. I think we've all visited Fort Gibraltar. We all send our kids to school on field trips, and to understand now that some of our fellow Manitobans who we walk alongside are going to have some very, very tough hours ahead, and potentially days as well. Certainly demands all of us to set aside partisanship and to stand together to send them our best wishes. I know that as a person of faith, I also will be praying for these families. To hear the very serious injuries that befell some of these children, I think really means that we ought to devote everything that we can to ensure that their healing advances in a good way. And for everyone affected, 16 children, 1 teacher, the other folks who I'm sure rushed to their aid quickly, the first responders, we also thank them and acknowledge them at this time. Hopefully they know that Manitoba is with them, they know that the people of the province are wishing them well, and we hope that God is with them at this time too. Miigwech.
While this is not a breach of the rules or practices of the House, I understand why members do want to bring this forward. This is a significant event that is happening in our community right now, and I think best wishes from our group and prayers are definitely needed for these families, for a speedy recovery for those involved. So I thank the members for their comments at this time. Routine proceedings, introduction of bills, committee reports, tabling of reports. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to table the following reports. One, the Regulatory Accountability Review for Manitoba Government Regulatory Accountability Secretariat for 2023, and two, the Vehicle Impoundment Registry Annual Report for 2022-2023.
Ministerial statements. The Honourable Minister for Sport, Culture and Heritage, and I would indicate that the required 90 minutes notice prior to routine proceedings was provided in accordance with Rule 27, Bracket 2. Would the Honourable Minister please proceed with his statement?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise today, May 31st, the day before June 1st, I know a little unorthodox, to recognize and celebrate that tomorrow, June 1st, as the start of Philippine Heritage Month in Canada. On June 12, 2023, the Republic of the Philippines will mark 125 years of independence. Here in our province, over 100,000 Manitobans with Filipino heritage, along with their many friends and neighbors, will join in the celebration of this milestone. Madam Speaker, I was so honored when I was asked to wear and celebrate this Philippine heritage attire by wearing this shirt called a barong. I want to thank Tita Carlita Nazuru for providing me with this beautiful shirt. And I'm just so pleased and honored when any culture or community asks me to wear it, to show my love and respect and admiration for that community. It is so, just fills my heart with joy. Some of these individuals from the Filipino community are present in the House every single day with us, and I'm honored to share the chamber with the MLA for Waverley, the first-born Canadian Filipino minister in this province, the Minister of Labour and Immigration, and the MLA for Notre Dame. I would also like to acknowledge the 6 previous trailblazing Filipino MLAs that have previously sat in this chamber. I would like to take this opportunity to recognize the work of the Philippine Heritage Council of Manitoba, which also celebrates a significant 20-year anniversary this year. The Council has sought to protect, preserve, and celebrate the culture of the Philippines in our province. Madam Speaker, we honor the important role Filipino Manitobans have played in our past, recognize the community's pivotal contribution today and the future, and the important designation of June as Philippine Heritage Month by both the Canadian government and the Manitoba government is a testament to the important role of the Filipino community. I encourage all Manitobans to engage in the programs and activities scheduled during the month of June, learn more about Manitoba's vibrant and growing Filipino community. Madam Speaker, we are stronger together, and our diversity is our strength. I want to thank you very much, and I want to wish everyone tomorrow a happy Philippine Heritage Month. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Burrows.
Mabuhay, Madam Speaker. June is Filipino Heritage Month. In Manitoba, we are united in celebrating Filipino Heritage Month and all the many ways in which Manitobans of Filipino heritage contribute to this province. Folks of Filipino origin have been central to the cultural and economic life of Manitoba for decades. There are currently nearly 100,000 Filipino Manitobans living in this province and more than 50,000 people for whom Tagalog is their first language. They have played important roles in many different sectors of the workforce in Manitoba, including making significant contributions to our healthcare system, the garment industry, education, business, engineering, and drafting legislation in this very chamber. There are a number of specific organizations and people who deserve special recognition today. The Manitoba Filipino Business Council does great work to support businesses in the retail, manufacturing, and restaurant industries. Among others, ENAC Inc. is an award-winning youth organization working to preserve and promote Filipino culture in Manitoba. PNAI's Manitoba works to address the unique challenges faced by Filipino women, and there are many more. The Philippine Heritage Council of Manitoba is organizing events all June for Filipino Heritage Month, including a flag-raising and opening ceremony this Saturday, June 3rd, at the Philippine Canadian Center of Manitoba. I encourage everyone to attend. While we celebrate Filipino heritage and the many contributions Filipino Manitobans have made to Manitoba, it is also important to acknowledge that they still face hardship and racism in this province. In particular, they were disproportionately impacted by COVID-19 over the past few years. On behalf of Manitoba NDP, I want to reiterate our commitment to address the challenges and barriers still faced by Filipino Canadians. We all need to work together to eliminate anti-Asian racism and systemic racism in all forms. As we celebrate Filipino Heritage Month, let's all recommit to taking action on these important issues. Salamat po, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Madam Speaker, I ask for leave to respond to the Minister's statement.
Does the member have leave to respond to the statement? Leave has been granted. Leave has been granted. The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and mabuhay. Madam Speaker, I rise this afternoon in celebration as tomorrow we kick off Filipino Heritage Month. 5 years ago, in 2018, the national government passed a resolution recognizing June as Filipino Heritage Month, and I believe this has caused a ripple effect. Since then, the member for Notre Dame has brought forward a private member's resolution about the quincentennial celebration of Christianity in the Philippines, and my colleague from Waverley, the minister, had a bill proclaiming that provincially the month of June be recognized as Filipino Heritage Month. Madam Speaker, the reason these pieces of legislation are so important is because June has become a month of opportunity. Opportunity to promote culture and heritage and to celebrate the many contributions of the Filipino community, where we now have over 1 million citizens and permanent residents of Filipino heritage here in Canada. Madam Speaker, we have such wonderful, strong, and growing groups, many of who are hosting events next month, including the Manitoba Council of Filipino-Canadian Association, the Philippine Heritage Council of Manitoba, the Manitoba Association of Filipino Teachers, and many provinces and their associations. Now, just before wrapping up, Madam Speaker, I know all of my colleagues are thinking, where did she get the snazzy jacket? Madam Speaker, I got this in the Philippines this past November, and I want to encourage all of my colleagues to go to the Philippines, check out some of the ANCOP homes, go and visit some of the white sandy beaches, Madam Speaker, check out the marketplaces, and be sure to try all the different modes of transportation like the LRT and the MRT, because we all know, and the saying goes, it's more fun in the Philippines. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Further ministerial statements, the Honourable Minister of Families, and I would indicate that the required 90 minutes notice prior to routine proceedings was provided in accordance with Rule 27(2). Would the Honourable Minister please proceed with her statement?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. As Manitoba's Minister responsible for accessibility, I am pleased to proclaim this week as Manitoba Access Awareness Week. Each year, Manitoba Access Awareness Week takes place simultaneously with National Accessibility Week, promoting accessibility and inclusivity. This week recognizes the dedicated individuals working towards the prevention and elimination of accessibility barriers. Our government is committed to working in partnership to build a more accessible Manitoba. This includes the development and implementation of 5 accessibility standards under the Accessibility for Manitobans Act, a 5-year review of the Act that is currently underway, and through the Manitoba Accessibility Fund that offers grants of up to $50,000 each to assist municipalities, post-secondary institutions, health authorities, nonprofit organizations, and businesses to improve accessibility. During this year's celebration, the Manitoba Accessibility Office will be hosting a virtual event on June the 2nd. 4 recipients of the Manitoba Accessibility Fund will highlight their exceptional efforts to make information more accessible. The Manitoba government has allocated over $640 million to bolster disability services in the province this year, including $104 million to improve services and raising the wages of those who provide them. These efforts underscore the importance of fostering a more inclusive environment as we celebrate our progress and reaffirm our dedication to supporting persons with disabilities and advancing accessibility throughout the province. Today is Red Shirt Day, and Manitobans join fellow Canadians in creating a visible display of solidarity as we show support to persons with disabilities and their families. We celebrate achievements and pledge continued commitment to building an accessible and inclusive society. Again, it is my honor to proclaim Manitoba Access Awareness Week in perpetuity, and I look forward to continuing work in building a more accessible future for all in Manitoba. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for St. John's.
Thank you, much, Madam Speaker. This week, Manitoba celebrates Manitoba Access Awareness Week. Annually, to raise awareness about accessibility issues affecting people with disabilities and promote inclusivity, accessibility, and equal opportunity for all Manitobans. This week also coincides with the National Accessibility Week, which celebrates today as Red Shirt Day. This week serves as a platform to engage in dialogue, educate the public, and highlight the importance of creating an inclusive society valuing and respecting the rights of persons with disabilities. Accessibility is a fundamental human right, and yet many individuals face physical, social barriers and limit their participation in various aspects of society, Madam Speaker. This annual event provides an opportunity to celebrate the achievements and contributions of individuals with disabilities who often overcome significant challenges to excel in their chosen fields. It highlights their resilience, determination, talents, and challenging misconceptions and stereotypes that they often do face. By recognizing Manitoba Access Awareness Week, we acknowledge the importance of inclusivity and the need to create a society valuing the dignity and rights of all individuals. And we also acknowledge all of those that are on the front lines working with Manitobans with physical disabilities. In the past, our province has stumbled on accessibility with this present government, missing deadlines like the accessibility compliance standards. However, I would urge all MLAs in this legislature to support and participate and commit to Manitoba's Access Awareness Week. Let's seize this opportunity and this week, not only this week or today, but for months to come, Madam Speaker, to amplify the voices of individuals with disabilities, advocates for all of their rights, and commit to improving accessibility and inclusion in our great province. Miigwech.
The Honourable Member for River Heights.
Madam Speaker, I ask leave to speak to the minister's statement.
Does the member have leave to respond to the ministerial statement? Leave has been granted. The Honourable Member for River Heights.
Madam Speaker, Manitoba Access Awareness Week, Red Shirt Day, which runs from May 28th through June 3rd, is an occasion to celebrate achievements and to raise awareness about accessibility issues which affect all people with disabilities. Strides have been taken to improve life for Manitobans with many disabilities, including passing Bill 23. But there is still much work needing to be done. Accessibility can mean the placement of a light switch or toilet for a person with dwarfism, audible street crossing signals for a person who's deaf, to ramps and wider aisles for a person in a wheelchair. But while those with visible disabilities are increasingly being helped, we also need to remove barriers for those whose disability we can't see. Sadly, people with invisible disabilities, like learning disabilities, ADHD, autism, FASD, are too often written off as unreasonable or difficult, and they are stigmatized. These can lead to frustration and mental meltdowns, where some patience and understanding would have been able to prevent this. Too often, individuals with invisible disabilities are excluded from programs like those offered by Community Living and Disability Services because their IQ is above 75. This must change. We need a society which fosters inclusion, not one which excludes. Helping a person with a disability has often led to advances in technology or in approaches which help everyone. This has led to approaches supporting universal design. The more we can move in this direction, the better. Today, during Access Awareness Week, let us be sure to remember all people with disabilities, including those with invisible disabilities, so that they are able to follow their dreams. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.
Members' statements. The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in the House today to recognize the contributions of Joe Namath and his family, small business owners in the Southdale constituency. Joe Namath is well known in the community for his locally owned and operated family business, Namath Diamonds. From the beginning, Mr. Namath had dreams of one day owning his own jewelry store. He took the first steps in 1974 by graduating from Red River College's watch repair course and diamond appraisal course. He worked as a watchmaker for 11 years at Al's Jewelers. In 1986, he put everything on the line and opened his first jewelry store on the corner of Dakota and St. Mary's. At this time, the odds of a small business surviving its first year was 1 in 10. For Mr. Namath, failure was not an option. He worked long days and nights, and 11 years later, they had outgrown their space and needed to expand. In 1997, they officially opened the Southdale location and have been in the community ever since. He and his family have been dedicated to serving Southdale and surrounding communities. Many people in the community have visited Mr. Namath's store as part of marking milestone events in their lives. From graduations and engagements to marriages, birthdays, and more, Mr. Namath's store has been part of the fabric of the community for 37 years. He takes great pride in being a part of the local business community and building long-standing relationships with his customers. Mr. Namath continued to demonstrate an entrepreneurial spirit. Even when faced with challenges during the pandemic, he was determined to continue the legacy of Namath Diamonds in Southdale. He developed new ways to provide the same quality customer service within a safe shopping experience. While some celebrations were delayed during that time, Mr. Namath still helped many residents mark their special occasions. Madam Speaker, it's my pleasure to recognize the dedication and efforts of community members in Southdale. Please join me in celebrating Joe Namath and his family.
The Honourable Member for the Maples.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Seven Oaks School needs reliable, adequate funding so that students can succeed. This PC government has failed through 7 years of cuts to properly fund our schools. The PCs love to make flashy announcements and empty promises, but we know these announcements will be paid for by more cuts to the classrooms. The PC government's underfunding means that schools in Seven Oaks are losing social workers. Social workers support students and families, ensuring their safety and academic success. Students in Manitoba deserve a smaller class size, more one-on-one attention, and more support like social workers' meal program for those who need it. Funding should at very least keep up with rising costs. Despite promise from the PC government to establish a new education funding model, they postponed it until after the elections. We revealed that their secret plan showed even more cuts, including $11 million from the Seven Oaks School Division. Schools and teachers are already facing many challenges, and the PC's secret plan to cut millions more from our classroom only makes things worse. Manitoba children deserve the best public education possible, and they won't get it if there are another 4 years of this PC education cuts. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It gives me great pleasure today to rise to acknowledge upcoming celebrations in my constituency of Lac du Bonny. This July, Pinawa turned 60. The Pinawa town site started in 1963 by Atomic Energy of Canada Limited, AECL, to house the employees for its White Shell Research Laboratories. The town was initially designed to accommodate employees and their families and provided only a limited commercial base, but in July of 1963, the town and surrounding area was designated a local government district, and the provincial government of Manitoba appointed a resident administrator to administer the town. This year, the community of Pinawa will be hosting a birthday weekend to celebrate its heritage and this milestone. The weekend will have social events, live music, a parade through town, a car show, beach activities, plenty of food, fireworks, and more. Another amazing upcoming celebration in my constituency is the Great Falls Hydroelectric Generating Station, turning 100 years old. Great Falls Generating Station is Manitoba's Hydro's oldest hydroelectric plant, as the first of 6 generators went into service in 1923. Great Falls operates 16 hydroelectric facilities on the Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, Burntwood, Laurie, and Nelson Rivers, 1 thermal, and 4 generating stations. The station, located on the Winnipeg River, was developed by the Winnipeg Electric Railway Company. Great Falls was built in record speed, being a huge accomplishment given that only access for construction materials and supplies to maintain the workforce was by rail. Today, Great Falls is the base for Manitoba Hydro's Winnipeg River operations, providing the lowest electricity rates in Canada. In July, Great Falls is hosting a fun-filled weekend in celebration of its 100th anniversary. There will be bonfires, brunches, barbecue lunches, group hikes, fireworks, and more. This July, I encourage all to come by these great celebrations happening in the constituency of Lac du Bonny. There will be no shortage of family-friendly outdoor activities for everyone to enjoy. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Sydney Project is a charitable community organization which works to provide new brand name shoes for school-aged children in my home community of Shamattawa First Nation. The importance of this project cannot be overstated, as it seeks to address the pressing need and empower and support our youth. The organization collects donations and distributes shoes to students from kindergarten all the way to grade 12. Access to quality foot care is crucial for the physical well-being, self-esteem, and academic success of our children. Unfortunately, many families in remote communities in northern Manitoba face financial hardship, making it difficult to provide brand name shoes that are often expensive but greatly desired by youth. On top of that, children are consistently growing, requiring clothes and shoes in new sizes frequently. As a result, children may feel excluded or self-conscious, leading to negative impacts on their confidence and overall educational experience. The Sydney Project is posed to bridge a gap, ensuring that no child is left behind by providing brand name shoes to all school-aged children, regardless of their economic background. They are fostering a sense of belonging and equality. This project recognizes the importance of eradicating social and economic barriers that hinder the educational progress of our youth. The tagline for the Sydney Project is making days a little brighter and lives a little better, 2 shoes at a time. It is so heartwarming to see the community supporting our youth by providing essentials that growing children need. I would like to sincerely thank all organizers and sponsors of the Sydney Project for their vision, dedication, and commitment to our youth. Please join me in celebrating this initiative, and together, let us work towards ensuring that every child has the opportunity to walk with pride, confidence, and equal footing towards success. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Good job.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, today I rise to recognize one of my constituents, Wenda Anderson from Killarney, Manitoba. Wenda Anderson provides tremendous support to the community of Killarney through her work with seniors. As the coordinator for Service for Seniors, a nonprofit organization in Killarney, Wenda has been instrumental in supporting seniors and individuals with disabilities in the municipality of Killarney-Turtle Mountain since 2011. Residents of Killarney consider Wenda a lifeline in the community, as many of the seniors she assists are without family support. She fills that void, Madam Speaker, which results in high praise from the entire community. Wenda provides a wide range of services, including information and referral services, yard work, advocacy, and companionship. Notably, her Day Dasher trips allow Killarney seniors to explore other communities in our beautiful province of Manitoba. Upcoming outings include visits to Brandon on June 8th and on the 20th, a trip to the Sandhills Casino in Carberry on June 13th, and a scenic drive around Killarney for ice cream on the June 27th. With the support of volunteers and her husband Brian, Wenda effectively manages Service for Seniors. However, they are always looking for additional volunteers, Madam Speaker. Unfortunately, Wenda is unable to join us here today, but she is watching from Killarney, and I asked all my colleagues to join me in thanking Wenda for her dedication and ongoing contributions to the community of Killarney. Thank you, Wenda.
Thank you.
We have some guests that I would like to introduce to you this afternoon. Seated in the public gallery, we have Victoria Stephenson, who is the guest and daughter of the Premier. And we welcome her here. And seated in the public gallery, we have with us today the 2023-2024 legislative pages. And on behalf of all honorable members, we welcome you here today. And at this time, it is time also to say goodbye to two of our pages that are here today. Chloe Telenko. 5 years ago, she says, "I never thought I would be standing here today. Having to beat cancer at such a young age really pushed me to view the world for all it's worth and to find the beauty within it. Little did I know I'd find myself 5 years later cancer-free and standing in this chamber, learning and witnessing." Learning and witnessing about the process of legislature. I'd like to thank all the MLAs, clerks, chamber branch, as well as my fellow pages who I've gotten to know this past year. You have inspired me to pursue a degree in law and political science at the University of Manitoba. Hopefully one day seeing me in this chamber or the one in Ottawa as a legislative clerk. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for all the hard work and commitment you do for Manitobans. I wish you all a great summer. And her guests here today are her mother, Amanda Norman Telenko, and her friend, McKenna. And we welcome them here. And our other page is Harsh Maan. Harsh Nurman, also known as Harsh, recently graduated from the University of Winnipeg Collegiate. As she looks forward to the upcoming fall, she is thrilled to attend the University of Winnipeg, where she will pursue an honors degree in political science. Being a legislative page this year holds a special place in Harsh's heart, as it has created lasting memories. Through this experience, she has not only formed meaningful friendships, but also expanded her knowledge of the legislative processes. Harsh is particularly grateful to her history teacher, Mr. Sage, who introduced the PAGE program to her. Overall gratitude fills Harsh's heart as she reflects on this opportunity. She aspires to carve a path in politics and is determined to pursue a career in the field. She is eagerly anticipating the future and the adventures it holds. The journey ahead is brimming with possibilities, and Harsh looks forward to making a positive impact and embracing the future that comes her way. She is thankful to everyone who has been a part of this opportunity and shaped her for the future. And she has a friend, Talia, in the gallery who is here with her as well. Oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
I would be remiss if I didn't applaud the Pages for sharing their stories and their optimism. Thank you so much, and I hope that your time here has been a good learning opportunity. Healthcare is in a state of crisis in Manitoba. We know that 300 nurses have been cut from the bedside, 87 paramedics cut from rural Manitoba, 3 emergency rooms closed right here in Winnipeg, along with 1 urgent care center. Can the Premier tell the people of Manitoba why she cut healthcare?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, Madam Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition's question, he started off so well, Madam Speaker, and then it was just downhill from there, Madam Speaker. Once again, false information on the record in the chamber. We have made historic investments in our healthcare system, almost $8 billion in this budget, Madam Speaker, in healthcare, $668 million increase over last year, 9.2% increase, Madam Speaker, 22% increase since we took office, Madam Speaker. Those are the facts.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a supplementary question.
The facts are these. There are 300 fewer nurses working at the bedside in Winnipeg since 2016. There are 87 fewer paramedics working in rural Manitoba just since the Premier took office. These are cuts to healthcare in some of the areas where they're needed most. There is a healthcare human resource hunt across the country. And yet this government is cutting the number of nurses at the bedside. There is EMS wait times ballooning in rural Manitoba, and this government is cutting the number of rural paramedics out there. It just doesn't make sense. Can the Premier explain why she continues cutting healthcare in Manitoba?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, Madam Speaker, we continue to make record investments in our healthcare system, Madam Speaker. $8 billion this year, Madam Speaker, in our healthcare system. $668 million increase over last year, 9.2% increase, Madam Speaker. Those are the facts.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a final supplementary.
I just want to point out the Premier never contests the assertion that there are 300 fewer nurses at the bedside in Winnipeg, because it's true. Because we've established it through research and documentation which we shared with the public here in the House. Nor does she ever contest the fact that there are 87 fewer rural paramedics working across the province. Again, because through research and documentation, we have proven it on the record here. Another fact that the Premier never contests is that under her watch, the 7,000 members of the Manitoba Association of Healthcare Professionals, they voted 99% in favor of a strike. This is all testimony towards the healthcare system being in crisis. In light of these facts, which the Premier always assents to, can she explain why she has made these cuts to healthcare in Manitoba?
The Honourable First Minister.
Madam Speaker, let me be very clear once again and put some facts on the record, because the Leader of the Opposition won't do so. The fact of the matter is that we are making record and historic investments in our healthcare system in the province of Manitoba. A 9.2% increase over last year, 22% increase since we took office, Madam Speaker. Again, those are the facts.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a new question.
Just want to point out that the Premier continues to accept that there are 300 fewer nurses, 87 fewer rural paramedics in Manitoba. On the subject of highways, people across Manitoba want to see more investments in our roads, and yet they've only gotten cuts from this PC government. As a matter of fact, when they were first elected in 2016, one of the first things that they did was cut the roads budget by $150 million. That's the reason why Highway 75 is in such disrepair today. It's because years of cuts that began the moment the PCs took office. Will the Premier tell the House why her government has slashed the budget for roads and highways in Manitoba?
The Honourable First Minister.
Madam Speaker, we continue to make record investments in our roads in Manitoba, Madam Speaker. We've invested more than $500 million a year, and we will do that per year over 5 years, Madam Speaker. Those are historic investments in our roads in Manitoba. Safety is paramount, but it's also we also need to ensure that we're getting goods to market, Madam Speaker. That's why we will continue to make strategic investments in our roadways.
The Honourable Leader of the... Order. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a supplementary question.
Madam Speaker, Manitobans are rightly concerned about the state of our highways. We know that folks in Pilot Mountain have been raising concerns about the state of Highway 3. And I'm sure that they would be shocked to learn that the Premier cut the budget for highways almost immediately upon taking office in 2016. And every single member of that PC caucus voted in favor of making that cut. Now, what happens when somebody from Pilot Mound emails their MLA and asks the Minister of Infrastructure to take action? Yes. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. That is case in point what the people of Pilot Mound have been reaching out to us to do, to step in for the vacuum of action and the lack of leadership that you see when it comes to highways and infrastructure on the PC side of the House. Can the Premier explain to folks in Pilot Mound and along Highway 3 why she has cut the budget for highways?
The Honourable First Minister.
Madam Speaker, the litany of false accusations by the Leader of the Opposition never ceases to amaze me, Madam Speaker. But let's put some facts on the record. The fact of the matter is we have committed 5-year commitment, $500 million per year to our roads alone across this great province of ours, Madam Speaker. Wow. Those are the facts. And that was in our budget, Madam Speaker. A budget that the Leader of the Opposition and all the NDP voted against, Madam Speaker. We will take no lessons from the members opposite.
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a final supplementary.
It's really something to see the PC's election year gonna strategy. It's all about what they're gonna do if they get another kick at the can. But Manitobans have seen what they have done over the past 7 years. They've cut highways, and now people who rely on Highway 75, who rely on Highway 3, who rely on any number of roads, bridges, and pieces of infrastructure across the province have been left wanting more. In fact, they can't even get an email or a phone call returned from the Minister of Infrastructure. Will the Premier tell the people of Manitoba the truth about her plan, that she plans to continue cutting the highway budget in order to pay for all of her fancy promises?
I'm going to have to call the member for Springfield or Shaw to order. The Honourable First Minister. Order.
Speaker.
The Honourable First Minister.
Madam Speaker, we continue to make records and historic investments in our roads in Manitoba. We've committed more than $500 million per year over 5 years, Madam Speaker. That is a long-term commitment towards our roads in Manitoba. And I was pleased to join the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure last week or a couple of weeks ago when we announced the twinning of the highway number 1, Madam Speaker, the Trans-Canada Highway from Falcon Lake right to the Ontario border, Madam Speaker. We listen to Manitobans. We want to make our roadways safe for Manitobans, and we want to make sure we get our goods to market, Madam Speaker. We will continue to make record investments in our roads in Manitoba.
The Honourable Member for Union Station.
For months, we've continued to hear devastating stories that make things crystal clear, Madam Speaker. The PCs are failing Manitobans who rely on home care services. High staffing vacancies have led to hundreds of appointments being cancelled, and now we've learned that the PCs are refusing to fill vacant home support worker positions in Winnipeg. Home support workers help older adults living on fixed incomes who often don't have family or friends to help them with daily tasks like cleaning and laundry. They help seniors age in place with dignity. Can the Premier explain why she has cut home support workers in Winnipeg?
The Honourable Member for Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and may I indicate to the member that this government supports the services for seniors by results. And Madam Speaker, may I say that the Stevenson report was put forward to ensure that seniors in this province are taken care of. $31 million investment to find supports for seniors, which the NDP voted against.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Union Station on a supplementary question.
Madam Speaker, the Minister is talking about a report specific to personal care homes. I'm asking a question about home care support workers. These workers provide crucial supports like cleaning and laundry. These services greatly improve the quality of life for seniors and provide them with the dignity that they deserve in order to age in place. Yet the PCs are refusing to fill the vacant positions for home support workers, and that has led to a loss of these workers in Winnipeg. We've heard that this is leading to mental health issues with seniors, evictions from their homes, Madam Speaker, lengthy hospital admissions, and more. That is the wrong approach. Can the Premier explain why she's failed to support seniors in Manitoba?
The Honourable Minister for Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and our government's support for seniors, I think, is evident based on a 72% increase to this department, representing $92 million, which the NDP voted against. Madam Speaker, when it comes to home care, there are 50,000 seniors that are taking advantage of home care. $300 million are invested by this government to ensure those needs are fulfilled. This represents a 3.66% increase this year. We are supporting the seniors of this province.
The Honourable Member for Union Station on a final supplementary.
Madam Speaker, respectfully to that minister, no, you are not supporting seniors. You are failing seniors across this province, and you're failing seniors in Winnipeg who have hundreds of their appointments cancelled, who can't get cleaning, who can't get laundry done, who can't get their basic needs met and live with dignity in their own homes. That's an abject failure of this minister and this government. It's totally unacceptable. This province needs to step up for seniors and their families. Will the Premier commit to stop cutting home care support workers in Winnipeg?
He's done.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, our government is committed to ensuring the staffing shortages that are being seen here in this province, that's not unique to Manitoba, but across Canada and globally, is dealt with. That is why I was so pleased to stand with our Premier in November of 2022 to announce the Health Human Resource Action Plan, $200 million investment, Madam Speaker, to add 2,000 additional health professionals, including home care support workers, health care aides, and more. What did they do, Madam Speaker? They voted against it.
Just a caution to members that when posing questions, the question should be posed through the speaker and not directly to a minister. The honourable member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Our NDP team is looking forward to showing our support for the 2S LGBTQ+ community by walking in pride parades across our province this summer. Manitobans were disappointed last year when the Premier promised she would walk in the Winnipeg Pride Parade, but instead left and chose not to walk in the parade. This was extremely disrespectful to organizers and to the entire 2S LGBTQ+ community. Manitobans need leadership. That's why we think every member of this House should show solidarity by walking in a pride parade this year. Will the Premier commit that she and every member of her caucus will walk in a Manitoba pride parade this year?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Well, I will agree with the members opposite on one small point, and that is that Manitobans need leadership, and that's exactly what they got. This last week, the Premier and I were very, very pleased to make an announcement of a new expanded mandate within government of Manitoba to include gender equity. That is why the Premier and I were very pleased to provide $250,000 to Pride Winnipeg for its operations. That is something that Pride has been asking for decades, and for the entire time that the NDP were in office, the answer was no. Under this government, the answer was yes.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley on a supplementary question.
Madam Speaker, the Premier's record of disrespect speaks for itself. She was banned from speaking at Pride after breaking her promise to walk in the parade. She refused multiple times to unequivocally condemn the banning of books, and she published an announcement on gender-affirming care and then deleted it the same day. Manitobans should know if every PC MLA will commit to walking in a pride parade this year. Will the Premier do the right thing, and will she commit that 100% of the PC caucus will walk in a pride parade in Manitoba this year?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I apologize that I did not hear that member's question. It's unfortunate that members of her own caucus were heckling her during that question. But what I think she'd ask is whether or not we will be at Pride. And Madam Speaker, we are very much looking forward to attending Pride this coming Sunday. There's been an entire week of activities. We were very pleased the other day to raise the flag in Memorial Park with many of our community friends and stakeholders, including Pride Winnipeg and Rainbow Resource Centre. I want to thank them for coming out to the flag-raising ceremony in Memorial Park. Very pleased that that flag is flying. Very much looking forward to a wonderful celebration on Sunday morning. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley on a final supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm also proud of the history of this legislature because that flag has been flying for over a decade every Pride, and that's something we should be celebrating. The Premier used last year's Pride rally as a photo op and then broke her promise to walk along beside the 2S LGBTQ community. And Brian Pallister used to do the same thing, which is why they made that rule, that if people have the opportunity to speak, they must also walk in the parade. The Premier knew this, but broke her promise anyway. 2S LGBTQ Manitobans deserve a government that proudly shows their support. Every member of our NDP team will be walking in one of the Pride parades across the province this year. Will the Premier promise Manitobans that every government...
The member's time has expired. The Honourable Minister of Families.
Madam Speaker, while the members opposite may want to politicize this event, this is the time that the LGBTQ plus community needs to know that everybody, that the government of Manitoba and that everybody in Manitoba. Madam Speaker, it's really unfortunate that the members opposite, and particularly the member for St. John's and the member for Union Station, are heckling me as I'm trying to express a statement that our government and everyone in Manitoba should come together and support the community and to pronounce that love is love in the province of Manitoba, and that we will not, that we stand united against hate and we stand in love. Unlike members opposite on this side of the House, love is love.
Order. Order. The honourable member for Point Douglas.
Which, Madam Speaker, instead of taking action to address the drug crisis in Manitoba, the PCs are trying to pretend like nothing's wrong. They've repeatedly refused to release timely overdose data and acknowledge the drug poisoning crisis, and to ensure all Manitobans are aware of the current public health crisis. They've introduced Bill 33, which would hamper the efforts of frontline organizations, and they've refused to open a safe, supervised consumption site, despite experts calling for one. And they've done all of this as we've seen a dramatic increase in overdose deaths in Manitoba. Will the Premier commit to stop standing in the way and release timely overdose data today?
The Honourable Minister for Mental Health and Community Wellness.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Bill 33 was a bill that would provide safety for Manitobans. It provided medical, it provided support and a pathway to recovery. On this side of the House, we believe in safety. Members opposite must not, they choose not to support the bill.
The honourable member for Point Douglas on a supplementary question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Preliminary data shows that at least 418 Manitobans died from a drug overdose in 2022. This is a result of this government's inaction. There is a crisis that needs urgent attention. We need to do everything we can do to save lives here in Manitoba. Yet the PCs have instead failed to take meaningful action and have actively tried to stand in the way of life-saving work by introducing Bill 33 and refusing to open a safe consumption site. The PCs are still refusing to provide monthly overdose data and even acknowledge that there's a drug poisoning crisis in our province. Will the Premier do the right thing and commit to releasing timely data on overdose deaths here in our province?
The Honourable Minister for Mental Health and Community Wellness.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On this side of the House, we support individuals who are seeking support for their addictions. And we have provided funding through Huddle for youth who are able to seek mentorship, they're able to seek resources. I'm not sure if the member from St. John's wants to hear this or not, but we have put funding to seek support for youth and adults in our province.
The honourable member for Point Douglas on a final supplementary.
Which, Madam Speaker, we need a government that's committed to harm reduction and will actually acknowledge that there's a drug poisoning crisis here in our province that is taking lives of Manitobans. These are someone's loved ones. These aren't numbers. They don't need prayers from this government. What they need is actual action. They need to know what drugs are out there and how many Manitobans are actually dying of drugs monthly. Will this Premier do the right thing? Will she support a safe consumption site and commit to releasing timely data so Manitobans know about the drugs that are poisoning and taking lives here in our province?
I'm just going to remind members again to respectfully listen to the questions and listen to the answers. I think there's been a bit of slippage in the last number of minutes. The Honourable Minister for Mental Health and Community Wellness.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I just want to continue on with the investments that we have done to support individuals. We have invested in 6 RAM clinics, with a 7th RAM clinic opening up with an $835,000 investment to assist individuals. We've invested in supports in the north, in the central part of the province, and in Winnipeg. We believe we want all Manitobans to be safe.
The honourable member for the Maples.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Manitobans know that PC government does not respect collective bargaining or healthcare workers. Frontline allied health workers like rural paramedics, pharmacists techs, MRI techs, radiational therapists, and 190 other allied health professionals have had their wages frozen by this PC government for 5 years. This is unacceptable. Will the Premier give allied healthcare workers a fair deal today?
The Honourable Minister for Consumer Protection and Government Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That member knows full well that negotiations are continuing, and he also knows full well that every collective agreement that this government has arrived at with the healthcare sector has included retroactive pay, has included compounding increases. Wages are not frozen, Madam Speaker. They are on the bargaining table. They need to be resolved there, and we encourage both parties to reach a resolution as soon as possible.
The honourable member for the Maples on a supplementary question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. These workers are waiting for 5 years. They needed a bargaining agreement yesterday, not tomorrow. They are still waiting. 99% of the healthcare workers voted in favor of strike. This highlights the profound failure of this PC government on healthcare. Allied healthcare workers feel disrespected, and they have had enough of this government's incompetence. Will the minister apologize for the government's failure and give allied health workers a fair deal today?
The Honourable Minister for Consumer Protection and Government Services.
I'll be very direct with the member. What he's doing here in this House today and what his fellow colleagues have been trying to do is to disrupt the bargaining process. Shame on them. They should at least listen to the former NDP minister, Jennifer Howard, who said, I believe and I know that collective bargaining can be a very delicate process. I wouldn't think that any of us in this House would want to interfere with this process because they want to take political advantage of the situation. Shame on those members.
The honourable member for the Maples on a final supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. These PCs are always trying to change the channel from their failure on our healthcare system. A 5-year base freeze during cost of living crisis, that's policy of this government. On this side of the House, we respect allied healthcare workers, and we believe in caring for those who care for us. Why has this PC government failed to give frontline allied healthcare workers a fair deal?
The Honourable Minister for Consumer Protection and Government Services.
Madam Speaker, I've been out at the doors talking to Manitobans quite often in the last few weeks, and I can tell the members opposite that few Manitobans believe the NDP when it comes to healthcare. Looks like nobody should.
Order. Order. The honourable member for St. Boniface.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The report we heard from the Wait Times Task Force today is not reassuring. Not only are sleep doctors saying lower cost and more effective public treatments are being ignored, the task force seems to be cherry-picking data to make the government look good because their own online dashboard shows that wait times are either the same or getting worse for cardiac surgery, CT scans, MRIs, myocardial perfusion, and ultrasound. And the waits for orthopedic hip replacements got worse from 20 to 30 weeks. We talk all the time about the privatization of healthcare, but not enough about the politicization of healthcare. As I table, the Minister of Finance confirmed last week that the head of the Wait Times Task Force was also negotiating new funding for his own clinic while providing advice to government. Does the task force have any independence, or is it just part of the PC's PR spin machine?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, it's clear that the member for St. Boniface missed the announcement earlier today with Dr. Ed Bushell and Dr. Peter McDonald, as well as David Mateer, who are part of the Diagnostic and Surgical Recovery Task Force. So let me update him. Over 72,300 total procedures have been funded through the Diagnostic and Surgical Recovery Task Force, including exceeded targets for hip and knee surgeries across most of the province. More than 43,600 of these procedures have been completed in the public health system. And Dr. Peter McDonald, and I quote, said, "Today's progress update is proof the approach is working, as thousands of Manitobans are no longer
The member's time has expired. The honourable member for St. Boniface on a supplementary question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The PC's task force excluded the Manitoba Association of Healthcare Professionals, who represent every person who does diagnostics in the public system. And people in the system are often afraid to speak up because they'll be punished, because our healthcare system has been designed to suit the party in power instead of patients. When we ask what's going on, we always get a deflection to ask Shared Health or the WRHA. How can we do that? In public accounts, we ask deputy ministers directly about why things aren't getting done. And at committee, we ask questions of CEOs and board chambers. Will the Premier call a legislative committee so that MLAs can directly ask questions to find out how Shared Health, RHAs, and the Wait Times Task Force are spending $7.6 billion in public money? Because that would be historic.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to share with the member what's going on and what is getting done. Over 72,300 total procedures, Madam Speaker. Now, he may think that's a number, but those are Manitobans that are receiving the care they so very much need. And let me update the member as well. 17 areas with 100% eliminated pandemic backlog: cataracts, cath lab, pacemaker, ultrasound, CT scans, pediatric neural assessments, urology, ortho, oral surgery, echocardiography, cardiac electrophysiology, MRI, pediatric sleep, myocardial perfusion, transplant, adult, allergy.
The member's time has expired. The honourable member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm working on 3 cases right now where temporary workers are unable to access provincial health coverage because their work permits are a few days shy of a year. One of these individuals are pregnant and due in October. Now, we recognize this is a work permit technicality, but this province, our health minister, needs to step up. It's her job to work with all levels of government to ensure no one falls through the cracks between now and the time it takes for the Provincial Department of Health and the Federal Department of Immigration to figure out a plan. Will this minister commit today that Manitobans here on work permits, even though shy a few days of a year, will have access to health care coverage?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank the member for bringing this to the floor of the chamber, because this is something that I have raised with the federal Liberal NDP party, and this is an issue that relates to the way they classify their work permits, Madam Speaker. And a change needs to be made federally so that individuals can access health coverage here in the province. I encourage the member to call their cousins in Ottawa and get them to make the change. Well, actually, her father. Madam Speaker, the change needs to be made federally. Thank you.
The honourable member for Brandon East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. While the NDP continues to politicize healthcare here in Manitoba, our government is focused on increasing surgical capacity in our healthcare system to ensure that Manitobans who are waiting in pain get their procedures. That is why our government launched the Diagnostic and Surgical Recovery Task Force, and over the last 2 years has invested over $250 million. Because of these investments, tens of thousands of Manitobans have received their scans, their diagnostics, and their surgeries. Can the minister provide a further update to this House on the progress of this task force?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, I thank the member for Brandon East for the question. I'm pleased to share with the House that over 72,300 total procedures have been funded through the Diagnostic and Surgical Recovery Task Force. More than 43,600 of these procedures have been completed in the public health system. Over 28,200 cases were completed with our contracted Manitoba Health Service providers, which is less than 0.01% of the total cases that were completed outside the province. There are now 17 pandemic backlog areas that have been 100% eliminated, including cataracts, CT scans, ultrasounds, and MRIs. Madam Speaker, these are the results, and they stand for themselves, and that is what is going on in this province.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let's talk about the state of health care, particularly in Northern Manitoba. We know that the hospital in Lynn Lake is shut down because of this government. We know the hospital in Leaf Rapids shut down because of this government. Hospital in Snow Lake shut down because of this government. Most services in Flin Flon shut down because of this government. Will this Premier stand up today and commit to restoring services for health care in Northern Manitoba?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, I wasn't here in the chamber, but I was certainly working in the healthcare system when the NDP drove around the province and they were identifying which emergency departments they should close. Initially, they said they would only close them temporarily, but then they closed them permanently. And I was so pleased to have the opportunity to meet with leadership from VITA, Madam Speaker, who shared with me that during the dark days of the NDP, they closed their emergency department, Madam Speaker. And here in the north, they have done the same. Madam Speaker, I know the members opposite don't want Manitobans to hear about their record, but they will be knocking on doors and running on that record of closing 20 emergency departments.
The member's time has expired. The Honourable Member for Flin Flon on a supplementary question.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. Let's talk about this government's record on health care, particularly in Northern Manitoba. We know that most of our hospitals are now shut down or don't provide any services because of this Premier and this Health Minister. We know that LifeFlight has been privatized, making it harder for people to get to the health care they need in the South. This PC government has damaged health care so bad in the North that people in the North don't have access to health care anymore. Will this Premier commit today to stopping the cuts and restoring services that Northern Manitobans depend on?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, it was our government that invested in the new emergency department in Flin Flon, Madam Speaker. Right. It was our government that asked over 30 stakeholder groups to come to the table of solutions to talk about the issues in the North and how we can work in partnership to address them, Madam Speaker. I didn't see the member for Flin Flon there, Madam Speaker. It was our government that also invested $812 million into northern and rural health care, Madam Speaker. That is our record. We have not closed emergency departments. We have restored northern patient transport, Madam Speaker. They decimated it, permanently closed emergency departments.
The member's time has expired. The honourable member for Flin Flon on a
Thank you,
final
Madam
supplementary.
Speaker. Well, this Minister of Health likes to put misinformation on the record about not having shut down any ERs. I welcome her to come to the town of Leaf Rapids and find an ER that's in service, because it isn't anymore. I welcome her to come to Lynn Lake and see the hospital that isn't in service anymore. Please come to Snow Lake, see the hospital that isn't in service anymore. Madam Speaker, this government, this health minister, this premier need to commit today to restoring services in northern Manitoba so that northern Manitobans can have access to health care.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, our government is committed to providing equitable health care services to all Manitobans, whether they live in the north or in rural communities, Madam Speaker. But in the north and rural communities, we have invested $812 million into a clinical preventative services plan. Madam Speaker, we are at the table of solutions with stakeholders throughout the north and throughout rural communities to talk about solutions. And to I know, Madam Speaker, every time I stand in the House, the members opposite shout me down. They don't want Manitobans to hear about what we are doing in terms of investments in the north or rural communities. They won't come to the table of solutions when they're invited, Madam Speaker. They just want to...
The member's time has expired. The time for oral questions has expired, and I have a ruling for the House. I have a ruling for the House. Following oral questions on May 15, 2023, the Honourable Member for St. Boniface raised a matter of privilege, alleging that on May 11, 2023, the Honourable Government House Leader and the Honourable Member for Elmwood had attempted to intimidate him. The member claimed that these two members told his colleague in the chamber that he would face retaliation if he kept asking questions in the House about issues and policies related to allowances for MLAs and what could be purchased with those allowances. The member contended that being told that he should not ask questions in the House is a prima facie violation of his privilege and his freedom of speech as a member of this House. The member concluded his remarks by moving that the member for Elmwood and Steinbach be asked to apologize to the House for their violation of privilege and that it be referred to an all-party committee for immediate consideration. The Honourable Government House Leader and the Honourable Official Opposition Leader spoke to the matter of privilege before the Deputy Speaker took it under advisement. As members know, there are two conditions that must be satisfied in order for a matter raised to be ruled as a prima facie case of privilege. Was the issue raised at the earliest opportunity, and was sufficient evidence provided to support the member's claim that their privileges or the privileges of the House were breached? Regarding the condition of timeliness, in his submission on this matter, the Honourable Member for St. Boniface stated that it concerned remarks made in the House on the previous sitting day, and therefore this was his first opportunity to raise the issue. However, that is not exactly accurate, as the member could have raised the matter at 1:30 p.m. on May 15th after the prayer and land acknowledgement. Our rules do prohibit matters of privilege from being raised during oral questions, but not before question period. So the member could have raised this earlier than he did. I'm not saying this matter of privilege is out of order because it was not raised at the earliest opportunity. I am simply noting that it would have been possible to raise this matter of privilege earlier that day, and I would ask members to note this for the future. On the second condition of whether the member provided sufficient evidence to support a prima facie case of privilege, I would note that the Honourable Member for St. Boniface related that the comments in question were shared with a colleague of his and not with him directly. As well, the remarks were not made on the record. I am concerned that such remarks could have been shared between members, and I would concur that if such comments were in fact made, then they could have had the effect of potentially causing a member of this House to feel intimidated. However, there is a significant gray area in what the member related in his submission. That the fact that the comments were not firsthand and that they were off the record makes it more challenging to draw any conclusions from this alleged interaction. Bosque and Gagnon affirm this sentiment on page 109 of the third edition of House of Commons Procedure and Practice when they note that in order to find a prima facie case of privilege, the Speaker must be satisfied that there is evidence to support the member's claim that he or she has been impeded in the performance of his or her parliamentary functions. In the current case, I am not satisfied that sufficient evidence was shared with the House to validate the case raised by the Honourable Member for St. Boniface. Accordingly, I'm ruling that a prima facie case of privilege was not established in this case. Thank you for your attention to this ruling. Petitions. Are there any petitions? The Honourable Member for Elmwood.
Madam Speaker, I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. The background of this petition is as follows. Number one, the spike in catalytic converter thefts occurring across North America has hit Winnipeg. The price of precious metals in catalytic converters like rhodium, palladium, and platinum are worth thousands of dollars an ounce. Scrap metal recyclers have catalytic converters priced to the vehicle, with some catalytic converters worth $800. Number two, organized groups of criminals are climbing under vehicles and cutting catalytic converters and selling them to scrap metal recyclers for cash without any record of these transactions. Number three, catalytic converter thefts cost consumers about $2,000 for each replacement. Manitoba Public Insurance charges a betterment fee for new replacements, so insurance doesn't cover the full cost. Number four, vehicles are manufactured without catalytic converters having part numbers or any other identification that would properly identify their origin. Number five, marking catalytic converters on new and used vehicles with vehicle identification numbers, VIN numbers, when sold will enable police and scrap metal recyclers to identify parts origins. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to adopt catalytic converter theft prevention measures that would require new and used cars being sold in Manitoba to have their catalytic converters marked with their vehicle's vehicle identification number. And this petition is signed by many, many Manitobans.
Order. In accordance with our Rule 133(6), when petitions are read, they are deemed to be received by the House. Are there any further petitions? If not, grievances? Orders of the day. As agreed to by the House on May 30th, 2023, the House will now consider condolence motions for former members of this Assembly. These motions will be called in the following order: Edward Williams, Jean Allard, Jim Carr, Michael Kotchuk, Joseph Marion, Cliff Evans, Jay Cowan. For each motion, the mover may speak for up to 10 minutes, and any other member wishing to speak will have up to 5 minutes. Once all members wishing to speak have done so, I will put the question asking members to approve the motion by observing a moment of silence. The House shall not see the clock today until the consideration of all 7 motions conclude. So I will recognize the first motion, will be related to Edward Williams. The honourable member for McPhillips.
Madam Speaker, I move, seconded by the MLA for Brandon West, that this House convey to the family of the late Edward Joseph Joe Williams, who served as a member of the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, its sincere sympathy in their bereavement and its appreciation of his devotion to duty in a useful life of active community and public service, and that Madam Speaker be requested to forward a copy of this resolution to the family.
It has been moved by the honourable member for McPhillips, seconded by the honourable member for Brandon East, that this House convey to the family of the late Edward Joseph Joe Williams, who served as a member of the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, its sincere sympathy in their bereavement and its appreciation of his devotion to duty in a useful life of active community and public service, and that Madam Speaker be requested to forward a copy of this resolution to the family. The honourable member for McPhillips.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I would like to start by extending my sincere condolences to the family of Edward Joseph Joe Williams, and to say a few words to honor his memory as a member of the Legislative Assembly here in Manitoba. Joseph Williams was born in Brandon in 1918 and passed away in 2021 in his 104th year. He left behind an incredible legacy of service to his community, which now can be celebrated by his family and the many, many others who knew him during his long life. As a young man, Joe spent 6 years overseas with the Canadian Army during the Second World War. However, this is only the beginning of a long list of experiences and accomplishments that he would have during his many years of life. In 1958, he was elected as the first MLA of the new constituency of Churchill. He was very passionate and knowledgeable about his community, and this led him to make many more important contributions here in the province of Manitoba. After his time as MLA, Joe served as president of the Churchill Chamber of Commerce and also managed the Hudson Hotel in Churchill for a number of years. He is also a great deal responsible for bringing the first TV station to Churchill in 1965. Joe was a pillar in his community, and his dedication resulted in many outstanding and lasting achievements. His legacy of public service continued even after his passing, Madam Speaker. In honor of his 100th birthday, his family established an annual bursary for Northern Manitoba students attending the University of Manitoba. Joe is still having a positive impact on the people of his community today, and I'm sure that this continues to make his family and friends very proud. Joe's wife, Ella May, passed away in 2001, but the two of them spent 58 years together that included many blessings and wonderful memories. Joe was survived by his sons, Hector, Bruce, and David, and their wives, Carolyn, Kathy, and Brenda. Joe was also blessed with grandchildren, Elizabeth Dilk, Emily Williams, and Andrew Williams, as well as great-grandchildren, Mattia and Hugo Dilk, and Torrent Joseph McKay Williams. We wish them our most heartfelt condolences in this chamber today. We are consoled by the fact that they are left with many incredible stories and memories of Edward Joseph Joe Williams. It has been an honor to share some of the details of his life in the chamber today. We thank Joe for his contributions, Madam Speaker, and it should also serve all of us a reminder that only is our time here in the legislature brief, but our time here on this earth is brief. And so we all must be cognizant of the fact that at one point, other MLAs will stand and reflect on our time and our career here in the Manitoba Legislature. And it is my sincere hope that we all follow the example of Joe and lead a life of giving, of generosity, and of longevity. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's an honor to speak about Edward Joseph Williams' history and contributions to this province. Edward Williams passed away at his home in Nanaimo on August 18th, 2021, in his 104th year. Wow. That's a heck of a life, and we can all hope to get that far one day. He was born in Brandon on January 28th, 1918, and grew up in Winnipeg and Thunder Bay. He served in the military for 6 years from 1939 to 1945. He was overseas in the UK, France, and Iceland during the Second World War. First with the 4th Field Ambulance, and later received his commission in the Royal Armoured Corps from Royal Military College in Sandhurst. He had a long association with Northern Manitoba and served as the first MLA for the new constituency of Churchill in Duff Robbins' government in 1957 to 58. Churchill was created by redistribution in 1956. During its existence, Churchill encompassed the northernmost region of the province. In 1999, the riding of Churchill was eliminated, and then it was divided into what is now Kiiwetinoong, Flin Flon, and Thompson. He also managed regimental institutes, the non-military activities at Fort Churchill. Later, he managed the Hudson's Bay Hotel in Churchill and served as president of the local Chamber of Commerce. He was a part of bringing the first TV station to Churchill in 1965. CBC. That same year, he moved to Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, as Director of Industrial Development for the Mackenzie District. Then he later moved to Ottawa, Moose Factory, Peterborough, serving with Indian Affairs until his retirement in 1983. In celebration of his 100th birthday, his family established an annual bursary for Northern Manitoba students attending the University of Manitoba. Joe is preceded by his wife Ella and is survived by his sons Hector, Bruce, and David, wives Caroline, Kathy, and Brenda, grandchildren Elizabeth, Emily, Andrew, and great-grandchildren Matea, Hugo, and Torrin. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Member for River Heights.
Yeah, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is with sadness that I rise to speak about an eminent Manitoban, Edward Joseph Joe Williams. He was a cherished father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. He passed away August 18, 2021 at his Nanaimo home in his 104th year. He left behind a remarkable legacy of service and dedication. He was born January 28, 1918 in Brandon. He grew up in Winnipeg and Thunder Bay, married his wife Ella, and together they had many things that they did together and had a long partnership with children and grandchildren who have done well. Joe shared a close bond with his sister Marjorie, who preceded him, dying in 2006. In the Second World War, Joe served overseas for 6 years, from 1939 to 1945, in the United Kingdom, in France, and in Iceland. Initially, he was with the 4th Field Ambulance, and later receiving his commission in the Royal Armoured Corps from the Royal Military College. Joe had a long and deep connection with northern Manitoba, where he made significant contributions there and also in the Northwest Territories. In 1957 to 1958, he served as the first member of the Legislative Assembly for the newly established constituency of Churchill. While he was in the legislature, he was also managing the non-military activities at Fort Churchill's regimental institutes. He didn't speak much in the legislature, but I did find twice where he commented. And I think the member for Kiwetinook will appreciate this. He commented, and I quote, "It's ironical that I should come from the largest land area in the province and have the least miles of roads and still nothing in this for me." He said, "I feel somewhat like Cinderella. I feel in similar circumstances as the honourable member for Rhineland, the only difference being that the fairy godmother has not visited my area yet." And he added that I understand the fairy godmother has been very good to the member for Rhineland. On another occasion, he was discussing International Nickel and Thompson. And he commented, "This area happens to be my constituency. First of all, on some of these things that have been said, the Churchill constituency is almost half the area of this province. It has been underdeveloped for at least 20 to 25 years. There has been very little done up here." There was a discussion at the time in the legislature of the fact that many who were working up north were working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And this was described as a very bad and poor situation. But when Joe Williams got up, he pointed out that in fact this work pattern, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, was actually requested by the men themselves, because when they came north, there wasn't a lot else to do, and so they liked to work as much as they could and make as much money as they could before going south again. Joe's dedication to the community in Churchill extended beyond politics. He managed the Hudson Hotel. He held the position of president of the local Chamber of Commerce, and he played a pivotal role in bringing the first television station, CHGH, to Churchill in 1965. Later on, he relocated to Fort Smith in the Northwest Territories, serving as the Director of Industrial Development for the Mackenzie District. His career then led him to Ottawa, Moose Factory, and Peterborough.
The honourable member's time has expired. The honourable member for Dauphin.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm grateful for the opportunity to put a few words on the record in honor of Edward Joseph Joe Williams. Joe was a true Canadian who lived in service to his country. At age of 21, he joined the Canadian Army. He served overseas in the Second World War from 1939 to 1945. During this time, he was sent to the United Kingdom, Iceland, and France. He was in the 1st Canadian Division, which went to Brest in June 1940 after the evacuation at Dunkirk. In the defense of France, Joe and many of his fellow soldiers destroyed hundreds of vehicles to keep them from falling in the hands of the enemy troops. He was lucky to survive and then continued on to Iceland in 1941, where he served for 6 months with the Allied occupation forces. After returning to the UK, he eventually went to the Royal Military College Sandhurst and earned his commission as second lieutenant in the Royal Armoured Corps. He also had the chance to serve on the Free French destroyer La Commandante. His family remembers his commenting on his appreciation of the food and wine that he enjoyed there. Later in his life, Joe became actively involved in the constituency of Churchill, where he served as MLA. He also managed all non-military facilities at Fort Churchill and then Camp Petawawa. Joe lived a remarkable life that took him to many different places. He was born in Brandon, he grew up in Thunder Bay, but he also worked in Marathon, Ontario, as well as in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, where he started his work, or when he started his work at the Department of Indian Affairs in Ottawa, he had assignments in Quebec and the Maritimes. After his retirement in 1983, him and his wife moved to White Rock, British Columbia, and traveled extensively in the United States, Mexico, Europe, and China. It is clear that this was a man who lived a most remarkable life, both in service to his community, professionally in his varied career, and also in adventures that he shared with his loved ones. I want to extend my deepest condolences to his family and also take this time to express our gratitude and appreciation for everything that Joe did for this country and his community. It is so important that we honor the memory and legacy of people like Joe Williams, and I am very proud to have had that opportunity to do that today. Thank you.
Is it the pleasure of this House to adopt this motion? Would honourable members please rise and remain standing for a moment of silence to indicate their support for the motion? Please be seated. The Honourable Member for Kiiwetinoong.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I move, second by the member from Point Douglas, that this House convey to the family of the late Jean-René Allard, who served as a member of the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, its sincere sympathy in their bereavement and its appreciation of his devotion to duty and a useful life of active community and public service, and that Mr. Deputy Speaker be requested to forward a copy of this resolution to the family.
It has been moved by the Honourable Member for Kiiwetinoong, seconded by the Honourable Member for Point Douglas, that this House convey to the family of the late Jean-René Allard, who served as member of the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, its sincere sympathy in their bereavement and its appreciation of his devotion to duty in a useful life of active community and public service, and that, Madam Speaker, be requested to forward a copy of this resolution to the family. The motion is in order. The Honourable Member for Kiiwetinoong.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It gives me great honor to stand and share a few words of condolence, but more so of the accomplishments of Jean-René Allard in memory of himself as well as to his family. Jean was born on September 22nd, 1930. He moved from Manitoba to British Columbia as a young person, where he worked in deep sea fishing, logging, and as a cannery worker. While in BC, he married and had a daughter, and soon after he moved back to Manitoba, but returned to BC when his wife was diagnosed with leukemia and tragically passed away. He continued working as a fisherman to support his daughter, and soon after, he returned to Manitoba once again. In the 1960s, Jean attended the University of Manitoba. Afterwards, he began his life as a civil servant, where he worked in various roles in northern Manitoba. He decided to run in the 1969 election for the Manitoba NDP, where he was elected as the MLA for Rupert's Land, which is now my constituency of Kiiwetinoong, and served under Ed Schreier's NDP government. Mr. Deputy Speaker, to this day, there's a number of community members and elders specifically in my constituency, Kiiwetinoong, who still refer to it as Rupert's Land, and it's something that's very common for the area. Most communities will not even necessarily know how the lines were divided and whatnot. So Mr. Allard, his career as an MLA meant that he was on the highway a lot. And I know we kind of make light of the fact that the constituency of Kiiwetinoong now, which was formerly Rupert's Land, is geographically one of the largest in the province, and very few roads. So Mr. Allard would have spent a number of days, weeks on the road, in the air, on the land, just being able to encompass and visit all the communities and all the people within the constituency. And it was also noted that he often kept a fruit cake in his glove compartment, as he felt that if he ever hit the ditch, he would have something of nourishment to eat. And understanding that that's just the reality of life of a Northern MLA, and in particular, Mr. Allard, kind of thinking ahead, thinking what would happen if I had this. So that's just an interesting anecdote that I thought of. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, when thinking about Jean-René Allard, we had talked about bringing forth condolence motions over this entire term, this entire 4-year term. So it had given me the opportunity from almost 2 years ago now to actually look into Mr. Allard and kind of research some of the little things that he was a part of. And I found the reference to keeping fruitcake in his glove box in case he happened to hit a ditch in a remote part of the constituency to be quite humorous and actually based in reality. But after politics, Jean returned to school and earned a law degree from the University of Manitoba. He married Beverly Bajanos, and together they had 5 children. In the 1980s, the family moved to Saint Laurent, where he ran a land development business called the Lake Manitoba Estates. But Mr. Allard, Jean-René Allard, to be specific, he was very proud of his Métis and his French-Canadian heritage, and was passionate about achieving justice for Indigenous people in Manitoba. He served his community in many ways, including being president of the Union Nationale Métis Saint-Joseph, and developed and writing Big Bear's Treaty, The Road to Freedom, an unpublished manuscript on the topic of Indigenous governance. And I'm sure Mr. Allard, over the course of his time visiting Indigenous communities, shared that knowledge, but also heard that knowledge. And that was very important to Mr. Allard, to be able to bring and encompass those interactions that he had from his own heritage and his own background to then that with Indigenous people here in Manitoba. So it was great that he was able to develop, to write, and to share those teachings with all of us. In 2002, he co-founded the Treaty Annuity Working Group, which advocated for the implementation of a modernized treaty annuity. He also served as an honorary member of its successor, the Modernized Annuity Working Group, which was founded in 2019. One of the things that I found very interesting about Mr. Allard and his work, there was his work as the MLA, but there was also more specifically his advocacy for Indigenous people and Métis people here in Manitoba. And he fought vehemently against the removal of the controversial at the time statue of Louis Riel that used to reside on the legislative grounds. Alongside several other protesters, Jean camped out at the statue on legislative grounds to prevent its removal. Although he was unsuccessful at the time in thwarting the removal of the statue lives on at the grounds in St. Boniface. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, when we talk about the passion in politics and the passion that people have, not just for their constituents, but more importantly with who they are and who their family are, it was something that I was quite proud of and quite in awe of Mr. Allard having that compassion and that passion for Indigenous people here in Manitoba. As I'm sure everybody in the chamber is very familiar, Northern Manitoba has a strong population of Indigenous people, and in particular, the constituency of Kiiwetinoong, which is formerly Rupert's Land. I time and time again say 95+% is Indigenous people. So for Mr. Allard to have that passion and that dedication for what it is to be an Indigenous person here in Manitoba. And as I mentioned, he was very proud of his own Métis and French Canadian heritage. To bring that passion to this legislature, to bring that passion to the community, is something that he and his family should be extremely proud of. So those contributions that Mr. Jean-René Allard brings to this chamber and brings to his legacy and to his family's legacy is something they can be extremely proud of. Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I mentioned a little earlier on, when I got to actually read and find out a little bit more research about Mr. Allard, I was extremely proud knowing that at the time in this legislature that somebody like Jean-René Allard was in fact our representative in this chamber, our representative in this legislature. And when I say our, I mean because I resided in a community that at the time was Rupert's Land, which is now Kiwatnuk, but at the time it was Rupert's Land. So he was in fact, he served prior to me being here, mind you, but he served with representing my parents, my grandparents, my community, as well as my neighboring communities, and for the most part, a lot of Treaty 5 communities. So Mr. Allard's passion and dedication to Indigenous people, and again to the Métis people and the French Canadian people that he represented also, is something we need to be proud of, and something we need to be able to share and say, great job, I'm proud of you, I'm proud for how you advocated for us, for our community, for our area, and your family should be extremely proud to have you on a permanent record here in the Manitoba Legislature, not just on a day like today, on the Day of Condolence, but for the work and the advocacy and the comments that you had made during your time in this legislature. Because sometimes they're not without controversy. Sometimes when you're talking about something that was 20, 30 years ago, and in particular with Mr. Allard, when he first got elected, it wasn't a great time. It was not a great time, and it's still not a great time today for Indigenous people here in Manitoba. But the advocacy and the passion from Mr. Allard to bring those voices forward, to actually bring to this legislation the concerns that are raised by Indigenous people, by Métis people, by French Canadian people, to bring that because that's who he was, is a testament to exactly that, who he was, a great and passionate advocate on behalf of the people of Manitoba. And it gives me great honor to share those few words about Mr. Allard, who in fact was my family's representative here in this chamber at one point in time, and will continue to be on and have that legacy that he brings forward, and be able to proudly say that his contribution made a positive impact for the lives of Indigenous people, Métis people here in Manitoba. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Seine River.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Jean-René Allard was a passionate individual who served in his role as an MLA for only a short time, but who lived a very full life. Allard was elected to the Manitoba Legislature in 1969 as the member representing Rupert's Land. Originally, he served as a member of the New Democratic Party, but he left the party to sit as an independent in 1972 and did not seek re-election in 1973. During his short time in government, Allard dedicated his work to the northern communities in his constituency. He fought for access to jobs that met the needs of the communities he had spent years in as a civil servant. Allard was always a man who strived to build community wherever he found himself. A proud part of his legacy as a member of the Legislative Assembly was participating in the process of honoring Louis Riel with the first version of his statue to be constructed on the legislative grounds. Allard was a proud Métis man, and he worked his entire life to raise awareness about the struggles of Canadian Indigenous peoples. He took on leadership roles in his community through his presidency of the Union Nationale Métis Saint-Joseph and in authoring his manuscript, Big Bear's Treaty. He was involved in various groups advocating for Indigenous peoples, including co-founding the Treaty Annuity Working Group. Allard thrived in many industries before and after his time in legislature. In his youth, he worked as a logger, deep-sea fisherman, and a cannery worker, among a variety of other careers, before moving on to spend many years working as a civil servant in northern Manitoba. After his time in politics, Allard went back to school for law, and in 1980, he moved his family to St. Laurent to start a land developing business. Family was always the priority to Allard. He had one daughter, Sylvette, with his late wife Catherine, and 5 children, Paul, Pierre, Luc, Marika, and Marc, with his second wife Beverly. Allard felt it was important his children were exposed to multiple cultures, so the family of 7 began a tradition of loading into a van and driving to Mexico for several winter trips. Allard was passionate about education for his kids. He spent years driving the kids to school in Winnipeg each day to ensure they had the best opportunities. We remember Jean-René Allard for his contribution to politics, his community, and to Manitoba. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for St. Boniface.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I rise today to pay tribute to Jean Allard, a former MLA and a constituent of mine in St. Boniface who died in 2020 working and hoping for the future until his very last day. Jean was very proud of his Métis heritage and his chairmanship of the Union Nationale Métis Saint-Joseph, a Métis organization founded by Louis Riel and his supporters after the Battle of Batoche. And of course, Jean loved his family and his community. He was a contrarian and a maverick. He was always sure to attend St. Boniface Cathedral on the anniversary of the death of Louis Riel. Jean was born in St. Francis Xavier near Headingley, and in fact, our families knew each other for decades. As a Liberal in the 1960s, he worked on campaigns with my uncle, and my aunt, as a lawyer, worked as his real estate lawyer in the deals in the Métis community of Saint Laurent. His obituary says he was a proud pépère to 12 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren, and he faced incredible challenges at a very young age. In his younger years, Jean, like many young prairie fellows, moved to make his fortune in BC. Amongst many careers and jobs, he worked as a logger, deep-sea fisherman, and cannery worker. And while out west, he met his first wife, Catherine, and soon welcomed their first child, Sylvette. Shortly after Sylvette's birth in 1952, he brought his family back to Manitoba. Unfortunately, while in Manitoba, Catherine was diagnosed with leukemia. Jean brought Catherine back to Vancouver to see her family in 1956, where she sadly passed away, leaving Jean and Sylvette to mourn her. At 25 years old, he was a widower with a young child. While on the West Coast, he continued to work on fishing boats while his brother Guy off the cold waters of BC to support his daughter Sylvette. The 1960s were a whirlwind, and Jean attended the University of Manitoba, where he made lifelong friends. And he went to work in northern Manitoba, where he was appalled at the living conditions of First Nations. In 1966, he was one of the first people to argue that we needed to have a statue of Louis Riel on the legislative grounds. In 1969, Jean ran and won in Rupert's Land as an NDP MLA with Ed Schreier in the Manitoba Legislature. That meant he was often on the highway in his constituency. He always carried a fruitcake in his glove compartment, as he felt if he landed in the ditch, he had nourishment. In 1970, he was a new member of the legislature and legislative assistant to Premier Schreier, and was given the special responsibility for developing innovative job programs for people in northern Manitoba, about 90% of them Indigenous. With the support of the Manitoba Indian Brotherhood, the Manitoba Métis Federation, mining interests and unions, Allard worked hard to pull together a new commuter flight service in the north that would allow Indigenous men to fly in and out of a newly opened mine operation on a 2-week cycle so they could earn good money and still remain in their home communities. Sadly, just as the new program was about to be announced, the government pulled the plug and decided the government would build a brand new town from scratch in the wilderness near the mine. He abruptly and bitterly quit the party in April 1972 and sat as an independent. Alors que d'autres demandaient que le statut de Louis Riel soit enlevé, Allard l'aimait. Il s'y est même enchaîné lorsqu'il a été question de la démolir en 1994, bien qu'elle ait été déplacée du Collège Saint-Boniface. The statue of Riel, created by Mercier, Lemay, and Etienne Gaboury, showed Riel naked, unprotected, and tormented. While others called for it to be removed, Allard loved it and chained himself to it for days. And during that time, as he was chained to a statue of Riel, he began to formulate what he saw as the answer to poverty on First Nations, updating treaties to modern times and to modern levels to create a guaranteed income. I ran into him from time to time in St. Boniface. In 1992, he and I had been part of a French language committee to oppose the Charlottetown Accord and appeared on a Radio-Canada panel together with Richard Chartier, the former Chief Justice, myself, Jean, and others. While campaigning, I ran into him in 2018 at McDonald's, and I recognized him immediately. And he immediately started introducing me around to people there. and also started telling me right away about the idea of modern treaty annuities and what we could do to solve the problem of poverty in First Nations for good. To his last days, he maintained a passion for justice for Indigenous people in Canada. Jean leaves behind many loved ones, his former wife Beverly, children and grandchildren and friends and communities. Our condolences to all who knew and loved Jean. He will be missed.
Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt this motion? Would honourable members please rise and remain standing for a moment of silence to indicate their support for the motion? Please be seated. The honourable member for River Heights.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I move, seconded by the MLA for Tyndall Park, that the House convey to the family of the late James Gordon Jim Carr, who served as a member of the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, its sincere sympathy in their bereavement and its appreciation of his devotion to duty in a useful life of active community and public service, and that Madam Speaker be requested to forward a copy of this resolution to the family.
It has been moved by the honourable member for River Heights, seconded by the honourable member for Tyndall Park, that this House convey to the family of the late James Gordon Jim Carr, who served as a member of the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, its sincere sympathy in their bereavement and its appreciation of his devotion to duty and a useful life of active community and public service, and that Madam Speaker be requested to forward a copy of this resolution to the family. The honourable member for River Heights.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, my friend Jim Carr was an oboist, a journalist, a leader of business leaders in Manitoba, and a politician who spoke and led with grace and strove throughout his life to understand others and to build bridges. Born and raised in Winnipeg, his journey began in River Heights. He exemplified the values of music, politics, family, and curiosity. He was handed an oboe in an orchestra program at Grant Park High School. By the age of 16, he was a member of the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra. Music remained a lifelong passion. Some understanding of the range of his interests is found in his remarks during the throne speech debate of August the 3rd, 1988, after his first election. He was concerned about the environment, saying, "The tragic neglect of our rivers is one of the shameful legacies of succeeding governments. The vast potential of these rivers, their potential and source of recreation for our people, has been lost and squandered by short-sightedness." He was concerned about those who are marginalized, saying, "This government must never forget those among us who, through the accidents of birth and circumstance, struggle to maintain their dignity and their sense of worth." He was a champion for Manitoba and Canada, saying time and again, "The human spirit overcomes impossible odds and prevails. This is the story of our province and of our country." He played the oboe in the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra, and he commented, "It is often said that an oboe is an ill wind that nobody blows good." And then he said, "I hope honourable members will find other ways of describing my own performance in this House." He was long an observer of provincial politics and commented, "Under the former NDP government, people realized that they were paying more and they were getting less. We could see our healthcare system begin to slip while our paychecks got smaller and smaller." In his speech, he commented on the Meech Lake Accord. During his time as an MLA, Jim Carr was known for his wisdom on constitutional issues. Jim was aware of the need for work-life balance. I remember meeting him in the summer of 1990 in the run-up to the provincial election that year. The election had not been called. Jim was tanned and fit. He'd been spending time in the Whiteshell hiking and getting prepared physically so he'd be ready for the rigors of going door to door and up and down the stairs of apartments and condominium buildings. In February 1992, Jim stepped away from provincial politics. He worked as a columnist and on the editorial board for the Winnipeg Free Press. In 1998, he left and became president and CEO of the Business Council of Manitoba, an organization which he co-founded and stayed with until 2015. While there, much of his efforts were related to promoting immigration to meet Manitobans' need for skilled workers and on attention to the support of Indigenous youth to get an education. In 2015, Jim re-entered the political arena. He was successful in getting elected in Winnipeg South Centre, and shortly afterwards was sworn into the cabinet as Minister of Natural Resources. While he was a member of Parliament, we worked together to help residents in River Heights and indeed around the province. As Minister, he launched the Generation Energy Initiative in April 2017. The ideas that came from the dialogue with several 100,000 Canadians resulted in billions of dollars of investments in electrical vehicles and alternative fuels, smart grids, clean energy solutions for rural and remote communities, energy-efficient buildings, and emerging renewable power solutions. July 18, 2018, Jim was moved to become Minister of International Trade Diversification. The title signaled a new focus on diversifying Canada's trade partners beyond the United States. It also welcomed more inclusive trade, with more Canadians encouraged to participate in international trade and investment, including small and medium enterprises owned by women, Indigenous peoples, youth, and those who identify as LGBTQ2. Jim also oversaw the expansion of Canada's Trade Commissioner Service, including reopening the original regional hub office in Winnipeg. He welcomed the entry into force of multilateral trade agreements, the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, and 2 bilateral ones with Chile and Israel. He also introduced a new international education strategy and emphasized corporate social responsibility. Jim was re-elected in the 2019 federal election. I had joined him going door to door. And just a day or so before the election, I was with Lloyd Axworthy and Jim, and we noticed that his strength was weakening. And then, the night of his victory, he gave an incredible speech, done with great courage. He went for a checkup the next day and was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. He had to step down from cabinet, but accepted a role as federal government special representatives to the prairies, the Prime Minister's eyes and ears and voice in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. On January 12, 2021, Jim returned to cabinet as Minister without portfolio. He was re-elected to a third term in the 2021 federal election and appointed chair of the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security. In his final speech in the House before his death on Bill C-235, Jim said, "I love every square meter of this country. In English, en français, in Indigenous language, in the language of the newly arrived, and all that represents Canada and Canadians." So it is with heavy hearts we gather today to honor the life and mourn the loss of Jim Carr, a dedicated member of Parliament and an MLA, a beloved husband, father, and esteemed member of our community. Jim passed away December 12, 2022, at the age of 71, leaving behind a legacy of commitment, of passion, and of service. Despite his demanding career, Jim's commitment to the community never wavered. He was the executive director at one time of the Manitoba Arts Council. He served on numerous boards, including the United Way of Winnipeg, the Canada West Foundation, the Winnipeg Airport Authority, the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra, St. Boniface Hospital, Canadian Club of Winnipeg, Winnipeg Poverty Reduction Council, the International Institute for Sustainable Development, and the Morrow Centre for Peace and Justice. Above all, Jim Carr loved his hometown of Winnipeg, the prairies, and Canada. He was known for his outgoing and enthusiastic personality, always treating others with respect and kindness. His passion for connecting with people from all walks of life and listening to different perspectives was evident in his interactions. His love of teaching led him to offer classes to seniors at the University of Winnipeg. He cherished the exchange of knowledge and learning from his students. Jim's devotion to his family was unwavering. He took great pride in his wife Colleen's accomplishments and cherished their shared experiences, from travels across the globe to summers spent at Caddy Lake. He was immensely proud of their blended family and celebrated the achievements of each of their children. And I'm sure he'd be proud that Ben is running to be the next MLA or next MP for Winnipeg South Centre. Jim's passion for cooking was well known. His brisket was hailed as perfection. Together with Colleen, they hosted family, friends, and guests from near and far around their generous dining room table. Jim held a deep appreciation for his Jewish heritage and frequently spoke about his Eastern European roots. He remained committed to the Jewish community while actively promoting local Jewish-Arab dialogue. Throughout his endeavors, his primary objective was to foster understanding and to bridge divides. Jim was a beacon of positivity, always maintaining an infectious smile. Even in the last years, when he had to have dialysis several times a week in order to live, his unwavering optimism and his determination propelled him forward until his private member's bill, the Building a Green Prairie Economy Act, successfully passed through the House of Commons shortly before his passing. This remarkable achievement stands as a testament to his indomitable spirit.
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Jim Carr. You know, one of my memories that I'll remember most of Mr. Carr was in Niverville. Not his constituency and not my constituency either. But we were both there for the opening, or for the announcement, I should say, of a new rec center. I think it was actually the first funded project under the ISIP program in Manitoba, if my memory serves me correctly. And it was a little bit of a tricky one because this long-awaited recreation center in Niverville was being attached to the new high school that was just built by the provincial government. That's why I was there as Minister of Education, because there was an education component attaching it to the gym in Niverville. So at this really great community celebration, the MLA for Springfield Reshot was there and emceeing the event. It was just so well received by everyone. They'd waited for so long. It was the first one of the ISIP projects coming forward. And Jim took me aside after the picture and he said, you know, Kelvin, like, this isn't my riding, and it's probably not a riding that we're going to win as federal Liberals anytime soon. It's in the riding of Provencher. He says, but it's the right thing to do. And you can just see, you know, how happy everybody is in the community and what a creative effort it was to get it done, attaching it to the school. And I said, yeah, Jim, you're right. You're likely not to win this as Liberals anytime soon. The riding of Provencher was last held, I think, by David Iftody federally, back when the Conservatives were splitting the vote in different ways. So it is very gracious of you, not only to agree to the funding, and he was the senior minister at the time, and I don't think he would have been driven, you know, overtly politically on the funding, but he came to the event, which isn't always the case. Sometimes in those sort of announcements, federal government might not have a representative or might, send somebody else. But the senior minister came and he said, I wanted to come here because I know it's important to the community, has nothing to do with politics, just because I think it's really important. That spoke to who the individual was. And I relied upon that a few months later when I was the interim premier, and I was calling Jim at that time. He was still the senior minister, and I said, we have a bit of a challenge when it comes to this great big regional wastewater treatment plant. We can't seem to get money under the Canada Infrastructure Bank because the project is actually too small. And I didn't know he wasn't going to be in cabinet that much longer, but he said, leave it with me. I'll try to bring it back to officials and see what we can do. So this again is in the southeastern part of the province, involving, ironically again, Niverville, but other communities as well. And he delivered on that. He was only in cabinet at that point then for a little while longer, but he made sure before he left that he found a way within the infrastructure bank and other ways to get support from the federal government for that regional infrastructure project, because he knew that it was important to the area. He knew that it was important for Manitoba, but he just knew it was a good project. And so I leave those two stories in the short time that I have as a remembrance of an individual who I won't remember as a Liberal MP, but as a Manitoba MP who just really wanted to do what was best for Manitoba, regardless of the area, the constituency, the political value that may or may not have been involved with it. He just wanted to do the right thing. He was a good and he was an honorable man. He served Manitoba well. He'll be missed by his family. He'll be missed by his constituents. We send our thoughts and, of course, our condolences to each of them at this time. And we thank Mr. Carr for his service.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
I wanted to take the opportunity to share a few words in memoriam for the dearly departed Jim Carr, because he's a heck of a guy. One very large presence as a Manitoban, as we've heard testimony from the other MLAs who've spoken to this condolence motion. There's many things that we could say about Mr. Carr. He was a father, a husband, an MLA, an MP, leader in the business world, philanthropist, a musician. But I would note that I knew him as a predecessor, as a Fort Rouge MLA, as he represented the same constituency as I do today, and as a friend, somebody that I had the opportunity to get to know a little bit over the years. And I feel like I was very lucky to have that opportunity to build a relationship with him. I first met Mr. Carr when he was the CEO of the Business Council of Manitoba. I think he was actually the founding CEO of this organization, which in itself, this organization is a testament to our province. This is about the homegrown large employers and business leaders coming together here to stand up for Manitoba values and to stand up for Manitoba's economy. And Jim Carr was the person that they tapped on the shoulder to express and articulate their views and to stand up for their priorities. And I think he did a very important job. One of the things that the Business Council is proud of to this day that began under Mr. Carr is their scholarship and bursary program for Indigenous students. And I know that Mr. Carr was very, very proud of starting this initiative. And over the years, they have supported thousands and thousands of students who are using education as a tool to improve their lives and the lives of their families for the better. And I could say people that I'm related to have benefited from this scholarship initiative themselves. So certainly I know Mr. Carr was very, very fond of his work on that. We also crossed paths quite a bit because we shared a good friend in another former MLA by the name of Lloyd Axworthy, and I think it's fair to say that Lloyd was Mr. Carr's mentor. And so Jim was around the University of Winnipeg quite a bit at the time that I worked there as well. And Mr. Carr left the Business Council and other engagements that he had in order to run for the federal Liberal nomination. So I'd see him out and about, doing the things that are familiar to many of us in this chamber who have gone through, races like that. And I remember seeing him at one event at a home in River Heights, and he came up to me, pulled me aside, And I asked him, what do you do? And he said, I sell memberships. That's my job now. He deadpanned to me. And so we had kind of a little chuckle there. And, obviously, I encouraged him. And we had some visits there. Not too long later, a few years later probably, the tables were turned, and I entered politics and went through my own, first at-bat there and was elected. And I have to say that Jim Carr was probably one of the first people to call me after I was successful in being elected as the MLA for Fort Rouge. And he was definitely the first person from another party to call and congratulate me. And his words were very encouraging. And, we obviously shared a lot of constituents, him being the MP for Winnipeg South Centre at the time, which overlaps with my constituency quite a bit. And he shared some good advice. One piece that I don't think I'm breaking any confidence to share is he said, get your 8 hours of sleep each night. All the other problems that you're going to encounter in this political world are a lot easier if you manage to sleep 8 hours. And my answer to him on that day would be the same answer I give him today, were he to still be with us. I'm working on it. Of course, we saw him achieve many, big things for Manitoba in his role as a federal minister of the Crown, cabinet minister. But I think it's his legacy and family and community that he was most proud of. I know that he had a deep love for the Lake of the Woods, as do I, and he passed that on to his children. And so he is dearly missed and mourned by his kids, by his wife, by his family, by all those who worked with him. And I do think it's very, very fitting that his last bill received royal assent, I believe on the day or on the week that he passed, about building a clean economy in the prairies, tying neatly together many of the strands of his life in the forms of the prairie economy, the province that he loved, and the public service that he dedicated to himself to. So I'd just like to join in the chorus of people saying to Jim Carr, thank you for your service. Our province is better for having known you.
The honourable member for St. Boniface.
Thank you. I won't speak too long. I know that my colleague, the MLA for River Heights, knew Jim much better than I did, but our paths crossed for so many years. And when you think about his impact on the province of Manitoba, it really is quite remarkable. Though I think I really would rather talk about his character. He was always generous, he was always open, and he was always, he had a fairness to him, which is very at odds with so much of the conflict and difficulties we sometimes now hear. He was a musician. He was a musician with the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra. He loved his children. He loved his grandchildren. And he was the deputy leader of the Manitoba Liberal Party and MLA for Fort Rouge during an absolutely critical time, both for Manitoba as well as for Canada. It was the time of the Meech Lake Accord. There were extraordinary pressures. There was extraordinary pressures because in this room we were facing decisions that would shape the entire future of Canada, and historic decisions were made. And Jim was a part of that, along with Sharon Carstairs and Gary Dewar and Gary Filman. It was a really incredible time where, at one point, in history passed through the hands of a single person, that person being Elijah Harper. But he went from being deputy leader of the Manitoba Liberal Party to going to work at the Winnipeg Free Press. He was very, very close, as the MLA for Fort Rouge mentioned, with Lloyd Axworthy. He then went on to work at the Manitoba Business Council, and then as a member of Parliament. And those are all extraordinary things to be part of. So he was part of the arts. He was part of provincial politics, part of the really Manitoba's and Winnipeg's paper of record, the Winnipeg Free Press, during a critical times for our province, part of the Manitoba Business Council, the founding CEO of or director of the Manitoba Business Council, which has played an enormously important role in working with governments and guiding governments and giving advice to governments. And When you would run into him, though, he was always very simple and it was very basic. I think I remember asking him what his advice to any candidate would be, and it was the simplest thing. He said, get lots of sleep, make sure you eat right, and get exercise. Those are the only three things he gave me advice on, all of which are actually really, really important pieces of advice for anybody who's running for office, especially if they're going door knocking. But it was such a terrible shock that he ran for re-election, and he'd been feeling low. He didn't know if it was a cold or whether he was just under the weather leading up to an election. And then on the day of his re-election, he gave a speech and went to the hospital and was shocked to find out that he was not just ill, but very ill. It was just an incredible miracle that he lived, actually, and that he had a chance to spend more time with his family, more time with his grandchildren, and more time with all of us. And the level of his dedication, he really worked to the end, to the very end, working in the interests of his community, of Winnipeg, of Manitoba, and of all of Western Canada, to be working to that extent, to be able to get one last bill passed just days before he died. And I think he was at peace. I think it helped him be at peace with what he'd accomplished. He and his family would say this too. He expected many, many more years of life and many more years of contributions to make. And it was a very difficult shock, both the news of his illness as well as his passing. So with that, I will offer my deepest condolences and thanks to his family, to his community, and to all those who loved and supported him. Thank you.
Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Would honourable members please rise and remain standing to indicate their support for the motion? The honourable member for Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I move, seconded by member for Flin Flon, that this House convey to the family of the late Michael Kochak, who served as a member of the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, its sincere sympathy in their bereavement and its appreciation of his devotion to duty in a useful life of active community and public service, and that Madam Speaker be requested to forward a copy of this resolution to the family.
It has been moved by the honourable member for Burrows, seconded by the honourable member for Flin Flon, that this House convey to the family of the late Michael Kochak, who served as a member of the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, its sincere sympathy in their bereavement and its appreciation for his devotion to a duty in a useful life of active community and public service, and that Madam Speaker be requested to forward a copy of this resolution to the family. The honourable member for Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I rise in the memory of Michael Kochak, a great Manitoban and a great leader in many ways. There are not too many people in this society who choose to serve this society or show leadership in many ways. There are people who work in one field of life and are successful and passionate. But while learning about Michael, I realized that Michael showed great leadership, not just in provincial politics, but also local politics, municipal politics. He was a business leader as well. and he was a religious leader as well, an impressive personality. I feel honored and sad at the same time, remembering about Michael today. Michael was born in Keld, Manitoba in 1931. He studied at Brandon Agriculture School and the University of Manitoba, earning a diploma in agriculture from the latter in 1955, after which he returned home to work on his family farm. Michael married Nettie Frickus in 1957, and 7 years later, they moved to Gilbert Plains. They had 4 children together. Michael was dedicated to public service from early in his life. In 1966, he was first elected as an MLA for Ethelbert Plains as a member of the New Democratic Party. In 1969, he departed provincial politics to continue his service at the municipal level, becoming the mayor for Gilbert Plains. He also served as a trustee of the Gilbert Plains District Hospital Board, was a member of the Manitoba Water Commission, the Manitoba Public School Finance Board, the Farm Machinery Board, and was director of the Pool Elevator and Manitoba Farmers Union. So he chose to serve this society using so many diverse platforms. Michael died peacefully on Sunday, January 24th, 2021, in Brandon, Manitoba. He was 89. My deepest condolences to his family and friends. He attended the Lamberg School in Keld until transferring to the Dauphin Collegiate Institute for high school. I salute his passion to serve, his vision for Manitoba, his hard work for Manitobans, and his sense of giving back to the society. In addition to his wife, Nattie, Michael is survived by his children, Brenda, Yulko, Murray, Marlo, and Bonnie, his brother Mervyn, and sisters-in-law Elsie and Marjorie. He was a proud father and a proud Jida who sparkled at the mention of any of his 5 grandchildren, Mallory and Brittany Yolko, Megan Roberts, Jamie Kochek, and Brant Luke. Michael started a farm implement business in Gilbert Plains in 1969 and expanded it to Dauphin in 1974. It soon became one of the largest businesses of its kind in Western Manitoba. With a handful of years, he also built 2 wood product manufacturing businesses in Dauphin. His staff, constituents, and customers were extended family. He worked tirelessly for them, moving nimbly between meetings, hospital, school, and church boards, town council, and other civic duties, community service clubs, and customer calls. Public service played a central role in Michael's life from an early age. At 35, he was elected as member of Legislative Assembly, Ethelbert Plains, in 1966, an office he held until he was elected mayor of Gilbert Plains in 1969. He was president of Kel's Ukrainian Church and Holy Cross Catholic Church of Surrey, BC. This was his religious leadership. Of all his community service roles, serving as secretary treasurer of Lamberg School Board, a role his grandfather held after helping to establish the school upon emigrating from Ukraine, held special meaning for him. Michael was a central figure in the community and a great businessman. When the Legislative Assembly was in session, he traveled back and forth to Winnipeg. The kitchen table was always open to traveling dignitaries, employees, customers, neighbors, and friends. On Saturdays, it became a constituency office. Customers knew they could call the house at 2 a.m. during harvest, and within minutes, the shop, as the farm implement business was known, was open. After retirement, he and Nettie moved to the lower mainland of British Columbia, eventually returning to their beloved prairie to split their time between Brandon and Clear Lake. Michael was happiest in the outdoors, farmland, or forest. He cherished memories of seasonal camping with family and friends at Blue Lake and was most content chopping wood and listening to the loons at his cottage on the north shore of Clear Lake. He enjoyed curling, carpentry, a good debate, and long family road trips with his camper, the Shadow. Family and friends, including those of younger generations, found him engaging. His intelligence and pragmatism fed a stream of astute observations. Michael will be remembered as generous in spirit, colorful in character, and purposeful in his mission to support the communities and economic stability of the Parkland region. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Consumer Protection and Government Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's my honor and my privilege to say a few words in memory of Michael Kowchuk, or Mike, as he liked to be called. Just like the current MLA for Dauphin, I think Mike has some Ukrainian blood in his past, and he's also got some experience in business that I'm sure he put to good use, and a good business sense likely helped him in his years of service here in the Manitoba Legislature. He was only 35 years old when he was first elected here as a member of the Legislative Assembly for Ethelbert Plains, 1966. I should mention that Mike was born in the small town of Keld, Manitoba. I think that's about 20 minutes southwest of Dauphin, if my geography is correct. I'll look at the member for Dauphin for confirmation. I got a nod from the member for Dauphin, so appreciate that. When he was first elected as member of the NDP, he held that seat for a few years, but then, as sometimes happens, redistribution occurred, and a new riding, the riding of Roblin, was created, and he just lost it by the election by just a handful of votes. I think about 170 votes, and so his time as an MLA came to an end. But while he served as an MLA, he experienced what so many of my rural colleagues have to experience, and I have tremendous respect and appreciation, which is living a few hours outside of Winnipeg, having to come to Winnipeg, and to be here and to work here all week away from your family, and then only getting to return on the weekends or when the legislature's not in session. I know that could be a tough life, and for Mike Kowchuk, that was the reality of his existence for the 3 years that he served. But his commitment to public service did not miss a beat. The same year that he lost that election in Roblin, he was elected the mayor of Gilbert Plains, and he was happy to serve in that role. And in fact, if you look at his biography and his obituary, there's just a tremendous record of service. Not only did he serve as a member of the legislature, not only did he serve as the mayor of Gilbert Plains, but he also served as on the Gilbert Plains District Hospital Board. He also was a director of the pool elevator. He served with the Manitoba Farmers Union. He served on the Manitoba Water Commission. He served on the Manitoba Public School Finance Board. He served on the Farm Machinery Board. He was the president of Keld Ukrainian Church and the Holy Cross Catholic Church of Surrey, BC, as well for a while. And he served on the Lemberg School Board. He served in Kinsman. He served in the Knights of Columbus. His was a life of service, and it's one that he took to heart 24/7, welcoming people into his home, even at 2 a.m. So that life of service, I think, is a good example for all of us, and that willingness to continue to serve either while being a member of the legislature or both before and after those years of service to find ways to contribute to your community. That's what Mike did, and I think his family has every reason to be proud of his legacy of public service. I should note that he briefly fell for the allures of lower mainland British Columbia after he retired. So many of us, are sometimes tempted to think that living in another part of the country or another part of the world might be more appealing, but it didn't last. He returned right here to Manitoba, found himself a beautiful place on the north shores of Clear Lake, and that's where he spent his remaining years, enjoying all the beauty and quiet and nature that Manitoba has to offer, especially in Clear Lake and the Riding Mountain area. I think his greatest legacy is his children and his grandchildren, and I believe the member opposite already noted them, but I'll make a special mention of his grandchildren. That's dear to me as well. When my father wrote his memoirs, he didn't call them I remember or Dad remembers. He called them Grandpa remembers, because he wanted his grandkids to know what he had done with his life, and I think the same is true here with Mike Kowchuk, the MLA for Ethelbert Plains. So with those few words, I want to conclude my condolences here and thank the Legislative Chamber here for their acceptance of my remarks.
The Honourable Member for River Heights.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I would like to add a few words on the passing of Mike Kowchuk, a revered politician, esteemed community leader, and a devoted family man. We mourn alongside others in Manitoba as we remember and honor his remarkable life and extraordinary and exceptional contributions. His dedication to public service and his tireless efforts in serving his constituents were exemplary. Throughout his political career, he consistently demonstrated a steadfast concern for the betterment of Manitoba, championing issues that were close to the hearts of the people of our province and striving to make a positive impact on their lives. He was approachable, he was humble, he was willing to lend a listening ear to the concerns of his constituents, and he was a beloved figure within the community. Born April 23, 1931 in Keld, Manitoba, Mike was the eldest son of Nicholas and Annie Kowchuk. He pursued his education with diligence, attending the Lemberg School, later transferring to Dauphin Collegiate Institute for High School. Continuing his pursuit of knowledge, he studied at the Brandon Agricultural School and went on to obtain a diploma in agriculture from the University of Manitoba in 1955. With a passion for farming, he returned to the family farm, where fate would introduce him to the love of his life, Nettie Freekas. They embraced the journey together, exchanging vows June 8, 1957, and settling in Gilbert Plains in 1964. Public service became an integral part of Mike's life. At age 35, he embarked on his political journey and was elected as a member of the Legislative Assembly for Ethelbert Plains in 1966, a position he held until 1969 when he became mayor of Gilbert Plains. During his time in the legislature, one of his major focuses was on improving the highway program and getting a more orderly process for its development. I quote from one of his speeches in Hansard when he said as follows: "It is high time that a program of orderly development of our highway system was incorporated, whereby the members of this House could have an opportunity to see what was on the priority list insofar as our highway construction is concerned. It is up to the government to give a dynamic drive in leadership to have the highway system developed to a 20th century system like was oft proclaimed by a lot of the candidates in the last June 23rd election." This was his focus for much of his time in the legislature. After the legislature, and throughout his career. He had an unwavering commitment to serving people of Manitoba and left an indelible mark. His dedication was evident in his numerous appointments and roles, including serving as a trustee of the Gilbert Plains District Hospital Board, director of the Pool Elevator and Manitoba Farmers Union, and an appointed member of esteemed institutions like the Manitoba Water Commission, the Manitoba Public School Finance Board, and the Farm Machinery Board. He also participated actively in his community with leadership roles at Keld Ukrainian Church, Holy Cross Catholic Church in Surrey, BC, and serving as Secretary-Treasurer of the Lemberg School Board, a position of special significance given his family's history and ties to the school. In addition to his public service, Mike was a prominent figure in the business world. In 1969, he established a farm implement business in Gilbert Plains, which soon expanded to Dauphin in 1974. Under his guidance, the business flourished and became one of the largest of its kind in western Manitoba. Furthermore, he ventured into wood product manufacturing, established 2 successful businesses in Dauphin. We mourn the loss of a remarkable individual whose contributions to our province have left an indelible mark in our hearts and in our minds as we speak here today. Thank you.
Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt this motion? Would honourable members please rise and remain standing to indicate their support for the motion? I will now call the condolence motion for Joseph Paul Marion. The honourable member for St. Boniface.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move, seconded by the member for River Heights, that this House convey to the family of the late Joseph Paul Marion, who served as a member of the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, its sincere sympathy in their bereavement and its appreciation of his devotion to duty in a useful life of active community and public service, and that Madam Speaker be requested to forward a copy of this resolution to the family.
It has been moved by the honourable member for St. Boniface, seconded by the honourable member for River Heights, that this House convey to the family of the late Joseph Paul Marion, who served as a member of the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, its sincere sympathy in their bereavement and its appreciation of his devotion to duty in a useful life of active community and public service, and that Madam Speaker be requested to forward a copy of this resolution to the family. The honourable member for St. Boniface.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to speak about Paul Marion and his life. I first met Mr. Marion on the campaign trail 5 years ago. I knocked on his door and he welcomed me in and introduced himself to me as the previous, or one of the former Manitoba Liberal MLAs. And we had a lovely talk. Because we'd known so many people in common, he knew former leader and Senator Gil Molgat, he knew former leader Israel Asper, and he had known my father and my uncle Frank and John Lamont, so it wasn't quite a family reunion, but it was certainly very touching. He was very generous with his time, and we met again on the street a couple of years later, or at least a year later, when I ran for re-election, walking along in North St. Boniface, where the newer developments are all named in honour of their French heritage, Molière, Gabriel, Roy, and others. And finally, I joined him and his family and friends at a funeral mass that was held at St. Boniface Cathedral. Paul Marion est né à Saint-Boniface le 8 décembre 1927, aîné des 8 enfants d'El Paul Marion et de Marie Titkat, petit-fils de Joseph Alderic Marion, qui était un pilier de la communauté de Saint-Boniface et qui a donné son nom à l'école Marion. Il a été grandement inspiré par son grand-père et ses contributions à la communauté. Il retourne à Winnipeg et fonde le Manor House Cafeterias, puis achète l'entreprise de restauration ferroviaire R. Smith Limited. Paul Marion was a very successful businessman. He owned Manor House cafeterias. He ran R. Smith Limited for food for railways. En 1963, il est élu par acclamation au Conseil scolaire de Saint-Boniface et en 1961, il devient conseiller municipal de Saint-Boniface. L'année suivante, il est élu maire adjoint de Winnipeg. He was deputy mayor of Winnipeg, as well as being elected by acclamation to the St. Boniface School Board, and was in 1971 became the municipal councillor for St. Boniface. Lors des élections générales provinciales de 1973, il est élu sous la bannière libérale dans la circonscription de Saint-Boniface, battant le député sortant Laurent Louis Larry Desjardins par une seule vote, après un recomptage effectué par la Cour d'appel du Manitoba. If you want to understand how important voting is, remember that Paul Marion won by one vote. And that's how he became MLA. Although it was challenged in November 1974, une décision, les juges Israel Nittickman et John Roman Solomon de la Cour de la Reine déclarent son élection nulle. So after a year, they called for a re-election, at which point there was another by-election, and Larry Desjardins won by about 600 votes in a by-election on the 20th of December 1974. Mr. Marion was married twice. First with Pierrette Massetti, who lived from 1928 to 2006, with whom he had 6 children. Shortly after the death of his first wife, he married Colette Moureau, who predeceased him. He was elected president of the Winnipeg Executives Association. He was president of the Carleton Club. And Paul died in Winnipeg on the 15th of January 2023. Le monument commémoratif témoigne de sa foi, de sa citoyenneté et ses contributions à sa propre communauté et de l'amour qu'il a inspiré aux autres, à sa famille, à ses amis et à ses collègues. If you ever see a picture of Paul Marion, if you just search him up and see what his obituary is like, the photos from his obituary, he has a wonderful sparkle in his eye and a little crooked smile. And that's how he looked all the time. It's quite amazing that in any one of those pictures, it captures a perfect example of his generous character, his friendliness, his, like I say, a twinkle in his eye and his sense of humor. He was also a deeply religious man. He was a man of tremendous faith who worked with the Knights of Columbus, and it was a tremendous honor to attend the funeral mass in January with his family, with his friends, where there was an absolute outpouring of love about not just for who he was, but for the wonderful contributions he made to the community, which were broad and deep. So, as I said, si vous voyez une photo de Paul Marion, vous verrez qu'il a toujours une lueur dans ses yeux et un sourire sur son visage. C'est ainsi qu'il était la vie aussi. Paul, tu as bien mérité ton repos. Paul, you earned your rest. À tous ceux qui l'aimaient, nous présentons nos plus sincères condoléances. To all those who loved him and knew him, we offer our sincerest condolences. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Elmwood.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. And I too would like to express condolences to the family of Paul Marion. And Paul Marion, some, I guess, 52 years ago, was running in one of the civic wards when the Schreier government amalgamated the city of Winnipeg and created 50 constituencies. And so there was a lot of new politicians that came to prominence during that period, who eventually moved up into the to the legislature here. And Paul was one of those who won in St. Boniface. And a year later, this was in fall of 71, and a year later he was elected the deputy mayor for this newly created Unicity. In fact, he was the acting mayor from 72 to 73. In 1973, Paul ran against Larry Desjardins for the St. Boniface seat, and he did win. and he was a member of the legislature here for roughly a year and a half. And as the member for St. Boniface pointed out, that was a year, 1973, when we had made a little bit of history in Manitoba, when in fact 3 provincial constituencies ended up being resolved by 1 vote. But I would have to say that having been the returning officer in Wolseley at the time, and having the tie-breaking vote between the Liberal leader Izzy Asper and Murdoch Mackay, my tie-breaking vote, there's a chance to have 3 tie-breaking votes in any election. The first is after the returning officers count, when all the ballots come in, and that Wolseley was the only one in that situation, where we had a tie after all the votes came in, and after the election was June 25th, after a month, I cast the vote on national TV for Murdoch Mackay, so NDP actually won the seat for a week. And the other 2 seats where the vote was tied was St. Boniface, but that was after the recount. That's the second time is after the judicial recount. And the third time you could potentially have a tie vote is after the appeal. So you could have 3. We almost had 2 in Wolseley, but the judges decided on, opening some ballots that nobody else opened before. So it was different. But there was a lot of drama here during that period of time. And so Paul Marion was the MLA for St. Boniface for that year and a half, while the process was followed, and there was a by-election called, and Larry Desjardins was returned as the member for St. Boniface, and it was Ed Schreier's birthday, which I believed the member for St. Boniface said it was the 20th, but I thought it was around a little different date, but close enough in that month. So Paul Marion did have a very good history in politics in this province. He exploded on the scene at a time when Unicity was brand new. The whole NDP government was brand new and was making a lot of progress here in Manitoba. And he did not stay here very long, but I think he enjoyed his time being elected official at the school board level, at the city council level, and at the MLA level. And once again, I want to express my condolences to the family of Paul Marion.
The honourable member for McPhillips.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, today we honor Joseph Paul Marion, who led an incredible life as a businessman, a politician, a family man, and generally as a memorable Manitoban. Born in St. Boniface in 1927, he spent most of his public life here in the wonderful province of Manitoba. He died at age 95, having lived a life filled with public service and dedication to his family. Joseph was known as a talented businessman. He studied business administration and worked for Picardy Limited of Winnipeg, and then also as a manager for several years in Alberta. When he returned home to Winnipeg, he established Manor House Cafeterias. Later on, he also purchased the R. Smith Limited Catering Company, which catered to the rail workers of the Canadian Pacific Line. People of this caliber helped to build and shape our great province and were part of making it what we have today. Their hard work and leadership continue to have a great impact. Joseph was incredibly active in his community, involved in the Carleton Club, previously known as the Commercial Club of Winnipeg. It was incorporated in 1901 by a group of merchants and businessmen, and he served as the president of that club, being one of only 4 people to hold the title. He was also president of the Winnipeg Executives Association and a founder of the Club Dôme d'Affaires Franco-Manitoban. He served as a member of the St. Boniface School Board and as a St. Boniface City Councillor, and of course, MLA for St. Boniface. Joseph was an exceptional leader who possessed a deep understanding of the unique needs of his community that he represented. Through his actions, he inspired many to follow his example and work tirelessly on the betterment of those that we serve. On behalf of our caucus, I want to give my condolences to Joseph's family and to those who knew and loved him. It is difficult to lose someone who had the capacity to touch the lives of so many, who was a pillar in the community, and his loss will be felt in many ways, but his contributions will always be remembered. In Joseph's memory, let us recommit ourselves to the principles he held dear and continue his noble work. Hopefully, we will find peace in the knowledge that his legacy will endure and that his contribution will continue to shape Manitoba for generations to come. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt this motion? Would honourable members please rise and remain standing to indicate their support for the motion? I will now call the condolence motion for Clifford Evans, the honourable member for Transcona.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I move, seconded by the member for Flin Flon, that this House convey to the family of the late Clifford Brian Evans, who served as a member of the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, its sincere sympathy in their bereavement and its appreciation of his devotion to duty and a useful life of active community and public service. And that, Madam Speaker, be requested to forward a copy of this resolution to Clifford's family.
It has been moved by the honourable member for Transcona, seconded by the honourable member for Flin Flon, that this House convey to the family of the late Clifford Brian Evans, who served as a member of the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, its sincere sympathy in their bereavement and its appreciation of his devotion to duty in a useful life of active community and public service, and that Madam Speaker be requested to forward a copy of this resolution to the family. The honourable member for Transcona.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an auspicious occasion when the member of the MLA for Transcona has an opportunity to put a few words on a record for a Transcona boy. As Cliff often referred himself as, a Transcona kid. Now, like many that went to school in Transcona, Cliff actually came first from the north end of Winnipeg and then from Elmwood, kind of like my in-laws. They moved from Elmwood, but they wanted to leave the city, Madam Speaker, so they moved out to Transcona, the city of Transcona at the time, because they wanted to be away from the hub of Winnipeg, if you can imagine that, in the 1960s. In his youth, Cliff spent a lot of time at East End Community Centre. Now, East End Community Centre, just to give you a bit of an idea, is in Regent Avenue East. At the time faced Pandora, but the other part was also facing Melrose. And Cliff grew up around in that area there, a very famous area, because at that particular time, Cliff was also good friends with my cousins, Angie and Teresa Caputo, who grew up in the same area and are around the same age as Cliff. And they remember, of course, going to the dances at East End and getting to know Cliff, and Cliff was often the life of the party. But the reason Cliff spent so much time at East End, Madam Speaker, is because he was really an accomplished athlete, a really good hockey player, an accomplished fastball player, and also was pretty good at badminton. For at the time and that place, East End was one of the few places that had an indoor area large enough to have a badminton court and can actually play without the shuttlecock hitting the ceiling. And so he was actually quite accomplished in that as well. In his youth, Cliff attended first Transcona Collegiate, which at the time, and I know for some of us that aren't familiar with Transcona, was located on North Day Street on the corner of Day and Rosso. But what happened was, because of the city of Transcona at the time was growing so quickly, they built Murdoch McKay Collegiate in the very far east reaches of Transcona on a street called Redonda at the corner of Victoria Redonda. he was one of the first students as grade 10, along with my cousin, to attend Murdoch McKay Collegiate, graduating in 1966. Started, of course, in 1963 when Murdoch first opened. And he took a great deal of pride, of course, in being part of that class that first opened up Murdoch McKay Collegiate. It was a big deal at the time. It was a modern facility, one of the largest places where at the time he could hone his skills as a badminton player, again, because it had one of the largest gyms in, at the time, the old Transcona Springfield School Division, and was often used for many of the track and field events, of which, again, Cliff was very accomplished at. And so he spoke quite fondly of his times and of his Transcona roots. But of course, we all age, we all mature, and we all have to move on and move into our lives as adults, and he did so. Meeting his wife, Linda, while working at the City Center Hotel in Winnipeg, not the Central Hotel, which used to be in Transcona, which was part of our family and owned by my uncle, but where he often spent some time in a place called Angelo's Beverage Room, but we won't go too deeply into that. But Cliff was very much a family man and a person that really enjoyed his time at parties and at gatherings with people so that they could swap stories and share some of the really important things, because he was always really quite proud of his family, Madam Speaker. Cliff and Linda were married in March of '73 and then decided to raise their family by moving out to Riverton. And that's where some of his political career began. He and his wife were married for 49 years. The children, of course, from the family were really important to him. Son Tyler, daughter Kelsey, also his sister Lorna, brother Randy, brother-in-laws Daryl, Wayne, nieces and nephews Jamie, Marissa, Jason, and Jeremy, as well as numerous extended family members and very dear friends. He was predeceased by his parents Alice and John Evans. In his professional life, Cliff worked in the oil and gas industry, working a little bit with Shell and Imperial Oil. I don't know if you remember, Madam Speaker, but Shell did have a refinery in St. Boniface, actually East St. Boniface, kind of up against Transcona, that refinery that was on, now I'm trying to remember the road, it's Dugald Road now, but it was called something else at the time, and the other one that goes this way, Panet Road, of course, that's where the refinery was, and that's where Cliff worked. Through the 70s and into the 80s, they moved back to Winnipeg and then bought the Killarney Hotel, and also had some time in Killarney. And they then bought the Olympic restaurant in Birds Hill, up here on North 59. Finally, in 1986, they bought the Sandy Bar Hotel and moved back to Riverton, where they sold it again in 1993. Just prior to serving as an MLA in the Interlake electoral district, Cliff began his life in public service as he was elected to serve as mayor of Riverton in October of 1989. So as you can see, Madam Speaker, a long political history. The following year, he was elected to the legislature as the NDP MLA for the Interlake. As an elected official, Cliff was known as very much a constituency-based politician. He really cared about his constituents, and it really didn't matter to Cliff, whatever political stripe. If you had an issue that needed to be dealt with, Cliff would do it. He would do it because it meant a lot, not only to that constituent, but also to his community. And he certainly was very true to that right to the end. As a matter of fact, Madam Speaker, I remember when I was first elected in 2019, Cliff showed up at the Transcona constituency office, and one of the first pieces of advice he gave me, because actually Cliff and Linda moved back to Transcona once he retired, or once he sold his last hotel. And one of the first best pieces of advice he gave me is to always be constituency focused. It's always about the people you represent. And that has certainly stuck with me, and that's something that I take with me every day when I come here to this house. And that was a quality of his that was greatly admired, because he never let party politics get in the way of finding a solution and moving his community forward, which was really important to Cliff. He, was really well known for that particular piece, and I really can't emphasize how important that was to him. And like I said earlier, this is something that he was conveying to me in September of 2019. Cliff passed away, unfortunately, in May in 2022. 2022, Madam Speaker, was an auspicious year for politicians in Transcona because we also lost Bill Blakey in September of 2022. And Cliff and Bill were very good friends and would often offer advice to people, solicited and unsolicited, of course, but always in good humor and in good faith, because they really cared about their communities, especially Cliff. Cliff was a dyed-in-the-wool Transcona kid. Always saw himself as a kid, and certainly was very proud of where he came from, the people he represented, and his family, most importantly. And with those words, Madam Speaker, I'd like to convey my condolences to Cliff's family and to everybody that had been exposed to Cliff. This is a good time for us to really express these our condolences. So thank you for your time.
The Honourable Member for Portage La Prairie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to put a few words on the record in honor of Clifford Evans. Cliff isn't someone that I had the pleasure of serving with in the legislature, but he was still around the legislature performing some services to the Minister of Infrastructure, actually mostly during the flood of 2011 and the year that followed. And during that period of time, my constituency was heavily impacted, of course, by that flood. And I interacted with Cliff a great number of times and got to know him and respect him very much. And the member for Transcona has outlined in fair detail, obviously knows him very, very well, the fact that he's very much about the individual. He's a constituency man. And during his time as MLA here in the Manitoba Legislature, after he was elected in 1989, he was very much known for that and the service he provided to his community. During the time I interacted with him, of course, it was much more than his immediate constituency. The flood covered a large area of the province, and he had to deal with a lot of the problems that were evolving. They were new to Manitoba, very different and difficult to deal with. We had never had anything quite of this scale in modern history. We'd be looking back into the 1950s to have anything in terms of a comparable flood of that time. But it was also very obvious that he valued his family quite a lot, because he mentioned it on a number of occasions, mentioned his wife and his kids, and he very much appreciated the time he spent with them. And I know that the time he took to deal with issues like the flood, he took that away from the family, and I'd like to express my appreciation to the family for letting us have that piece of his time. He did a great job in terms of working with us. He very often had to clean up what had turned out to be, quite honestly, a mess in many cases. I know I was dealing with them on the whole issue of the hoop and holler cut that they were planning on making, and the minister he worked for was responsible for that. They had absolutely no idea what they were doing and what damage they could do, but he was patient enough to listen to our concerns, and we did what we could working with him to minimize the impact of a very poor idea that was done out of desperation, I think. He was good to work with. And then, of course, afterwards, when we were trying to find compensation and deal with the damages that had occurred, not only from that particular instance, but the flood itself in general, he was very good to work with. So I appreciated the time I got to know him, and I certainly grew to respect him. Certainly as his time as a legislature, but also as his time as a civil servant here in the legislature, dealing with a disaster situation. Great to work with, and very professional about it. So I would like to express my condolences to his family for
for their loss, and Cliff's legacy will not be forgotten. Through his actions, he reminds us all of embracing both our professional and personal responsibilities, finding some level of harmony between the two kinds of commitments, and cherishing the moments that we have when we're here. So thank you very much. My pleasure to put a few words on the record in memory of Cliff Evans.
The Honourable Member for River Heights.
Madam Speaker, I rise to offer condolences to the family and friends of Cliff Evans. He was a beloved husband, father, brother, member of our community. I got to know him and met him on many occasions, starting when I was the Member of Parliament for Portage Interlake. Born May 16, 1948 in Winnipeg, Cliff's childhood was full of lots of fun and joyful memories. He grew up in North End Elmwood and in Transcona. He forged lifelong friendships and cherished the camaraderie of playing baseball and street hockey with the neighborhood children. The East End Community Centre had a special place in his heart, and he spent winters playing hockey, skating, and building lasting connections. He excelled as an athlete in his youth, earning accolades as a champion high school badminton player, playing junior hockey for the Winnipeg Monarchs and the West Kildonan North Stars. After high school, he continued participating in sports, catching fastball in the Winnipeg Fastball League and playing for traveling tournament teams like the Pandora Inn and Transcona OVs. His commitment to public life began in the Interlake, where he served as the mayor of Riverton starting in October 1989. In 1990, he transitioned to provincial politics, being elected in the election of that year as the member of the Legislative Assembly for Interlake and for the New Democratic Party. Through his tenure, he demonstrated unwavering dedication to his constituents, tirelessly addressing their concerns and working across party lines. Some of his concerns he outlined as an example in the throne speech in 1990 when he responded to the throne speech talking about the importance of parent and child centers, of the Lundar Eriksdale Ashern proposal for a family resource center, the proposal for a personal care home in Riverton, the importance of the Washaw Bay project, the importance of an alfalfa processing plant in the Interlake. Throughout all his efforts, he was supported by his wife Linda and his son Tyler and daughter Kelsey. It is noteworthy that he was very committed to ensuring the democratic process and ensuring that elections were held properly. After the 1995 election, he worked closely with his colleague Tim Sale to expose the election shenanigans of the PC party in the Interlake and worked hard to prevent the undermining of the democratic process. There, of course, was a long and extensive investigation, but his commitment to democracy was certainly understood by everyone and was very important. After retiring from elected office in 1999, Cliff continued to serve his community in various volunteer efforts, working as a ministerial assistant, devoting his time to the former MLA's Association. He worked on floods, as has been noted, on many other items. He worked well with others and across party lines to get things done for people and for Manitoba. He took great pride in serving on the executive committee supporting the Youth Parliament of Manitoba, Even in semi-retirement, he remained active and worked as constituency assistant for Nikki Ashton. Sadly, in 2009, he was diagnosed with cancer and passed away. Subsequently, we honor today the life and achievements of Cliff Evans, recognize the profound impact he had on the lives that he touched, and his important and value and efforts in support of democracy. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm honored to put a few words on the record in recognition of Cliff. I didn't get to know him until after I got elected in 2016, so sometime after that when I first spoke to him. And he was still, at that point, he was working for Nikki Ashton on a part-time basis as one of her riding assistants in the Interlake. And my connection with him was that he would phone advocating for people in the constituency, particularly fishers, and problems that they were having with CEDF at the time, and trying to get loans and trying to do different things. And really that was my introduction to Cliff, was him standing up, fighting for those constituents to make sure that they could get the best deal to survive in a tough business, in a tough economy, in a tough life. And he was always there fighting for them. There was any number of times that we spoke on the phone, primarily, that it was going to be a short conversation just to update each other on what was taking place. But I came to discover that a short conversation with Cliff was never really that short. And apparently I'm guilty of that sometimes myself, so that's maybe why the two of us got along all right. But always standing up for the little person, standing up for the person who didn't have a voice. That was the Cliff that I knew. That's what he showed me, was that he was a voice for people in that constituency, a voice for people that needed a voice, that didn't have that voice otherwise. So I'm really honored to just say those few things about a man that I came to call a friend, just in the interactions we had in that short period of time. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Burrows.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Cliff Evans was a great man. I communicated with him between 2020 and 21 briefly through emails, and I just met him once. He was such a friendly person and impressed me in that single meeting. And he came to my office, and we talked a lot. And he talked without any notes. He had a wealth of knowledge about the moisture situation in Interlake and fisheries industry in Manitoba. He knew so many fishers, especially in the Interlake. And I could see the passion for serving Manitobans at a stage where he was semi-retired, and still he wanted to give back to the society. And a lot has been said about Cliff by my colleagues, so I won't repeat so many things. But what I appreciate about him is that he was an athlete. He loved sports, played sports not only during his student life, but even after. And when he was visiting my office and interacting with my colleagues in my constituency office with my staff, and he was so much friendly, and he had a great sense of humor. And he was asking my staff, is this guy using a better furniture than you guys or not? Or it's the same one? And everybody laughed. So in that short span that we talked to each other in person, he impressed me. We can well imagine how would the people who he served for so many years and talked to them for so many years and decades, how well would he had served those people. So I want to say thanks for his service to Manitobans, and unfortunately he passed away on May 6th, 2022. My deepest condolences to his family. And I want to thank his family and friends for sharing Cliff with all of us and letting him serve Manitoba. Thank you so much.
Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt this motion? Would honourable members please rise and remain standing to indicate their support for the motion? I will now call the condolence motion for Jay Cowan. The honourable member for Flin Flon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that this House convey, I'm sorry, seconded by Amanda. Pardon the delay. I move, seconded by the member from the Pawcamisac, that this House convey to the family of the late James Marine Cowan, who served as member of the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, its sincere sympathy in their bereavement and its appreciation of his devotion to duty in a useful life of active community and public service, and that Madam Speaker be requested to forward a copy of this resolution to the family.
It has been moved by the honourable member for Flin Flon, seconded by the honourable member for the Pawcamisac, that this House convey to the family of the late J. Marine Cowan, who served as a member of the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, its sincere sympathy in their bereavement and its appreciation of his devotion to duty in a useful life of active community and public service, and that Madam Speaker be requested to forward a copy of this resolution to the family. The honourable member for Flin Flon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm honoured to stand up and speak about Jay Cowan. While I may not have known him personally, the name Jay Cowan was well known throughout the Flin Flon constituency and certainly throughout the Steelworkers Union that I was a part of for many years. So it's not as if I didn't know Jay, while I may not have ever shaken hands with him and spoken to him personally. Jay was born July 31st, 1946 and died January 23, 2022. He was elected as an NDP candidate for the Churchill constituency at the provincial general election of 1977. And there's an interesting story about how Jay came to be the candidate and the future MLA for Churchill. He was actually recruited to head up north and find a candidate to run in that constituency. And somewhere along the way, he became the candidate and was successful at it and became the MLA for Churchill, a position which he was re-elected in 1982, 1986, and 1988. During his time in this Legislative Assembly, he held cabinet ministerial portfolios in the Poly government of Northern Affairs, 1981 to 83, Cooperative Development, 1986 to 88. Jay retired from politics in 1990. Some of the information that I've heard and that I've gleaned about Jay and his career was in the late 1970s, which is probably how I came to know the name. It was almost impossible, apparently, to open a newspaper in this province and not read about Jay Cowan. It was almost impossible to listen to a radio station and not hear about Jay Cowan. And certainly one of the things that I first heard about him was his work on the environment file, and specific to the company that I worked for in Flin Flon, making sure that the Clean Environment Commission actually was aware of issues that may have been from smelter smoke and emissions from the plant, and was instrumental in doing something about that. One of the predecessors in the steelworker safety job that I had told me there's a big, thick series of black binders in that filing cabinet that your job when you take over is to read those and understand who Jay Cowan was and understand what the Clean Environment Commission did. I'm guilty, I didn't read the whole thing. I kind of skimmed through it, but knew enough to know that that's how things got changed in that community to make a better, healthier community. When Mr. Cowan first came to Canada in the 70s, there was some thought that he was a draft dodger. And I'd like to ensure that this House understands that that was absolutely not the case. He was, however, very passionately opposed to the Vietnam War, an immoral war, in his opinion, that was not the way to resolve conflicts in the world. I would have to agree with him that those type of wars are not the proper way to resolve conflicts. There's better ways. And certainly that's one of the things that I've been impressed with reading up on Jay Cowan, was his passionate opposition to war as a solution. Jay is survived by his wife, Elaine, stepdaughters, Tracy and Teresa, two grandchildren, Mariah and Jordan, as well as other family members. He was born in Chicago, Illinois, July 31st, 1946. When he first showed up in Canada, interesting that it was the 70s. It was a different time that those of us who were around back then and were doing different things knew that you could have a job, you could get a job, there was jobs to be had. So when he first showed up here, he worked as a logger in the Maritimes, snow shoveler at Montreal, and landed up as a miner at Lynn Lake, which is part of the Flin Flon constituency. He went on to become a member of the United Steelworkers Union and was active in that local 8144 at the time, because at the time, in the 70s, Lynn Lake was a going concern, Leaf Rapids was a going concern, there was employment, there was jobs in the north, and he was very active in not just the Steelworkers Union, but also in the MFL. He became quite active. He was, at the time, coordinated the campaign called the Fight Back program at the Manitoba Federation of Labor, and worked with the Informal Workers Training Program co-sponsored by the MFL and the provincial government. He also chaired the Safety and Health Committee of the Manitoba Federation of Labor, and he was a member of the Manitoba Association of Rights and Liberties. I can imagine being the co-chair of the MFL Health and Safety Committee back in the 70s was a huge, monstrous challenge, which would have taken a special person to be involved in that, but that was Jay Cowan. He wasn't afraid to accept that challenge and step into those roles to fight not just for workers' rights, but for workers' very survival. Because at that time in the 70s, workers' deaths, particularly in the mining industry, were far too often. So I really want to recognize the work that he did to try and make mining a safer place for all people to be employed. So Cowan had a very robust career life. He spent 4 decades of his life working with First Nations, Métis, Inuit, federal, provincial, municipal governments, but he also worked in the private sector. Nonprofits, non-government, labor organizations. So he did a lot of things in the course of his life that led him to be such a well-rounded person. There was some thought that once upon a time he was very well educated, and he's quoted as saying in an article that that wasn't really true, that his education was more self-taught, although he did spend a year at Oakland University in Rochester, Minnesota. But most of his education came from reading and doing as opposed to learning. One of his favorite pastimes was photography, and he apparently spent a lot of time mainly photographing lighting fixtures for catalog houses. He also did freelance photography work for the Montreal Star, and a freelance writer and author, a good friend he had to Josh Freed. He had a number of photographic commissions in Canada and the US and in Mexico. One of the things that was different back in those days as well is he was going to be a bit of an entrepreneur, and him and some buddies invested in some property in the Maritimes, and the buddies all went to work and left somebody else looking after things, and well, go figure, things didn't pan out that well. They lost the property, and whatever money they'd been sending to the fella there was also lost, which I guess was a benefit to the rest of us, because then Jay settled in working in politics. So he was active in the years in politics from 77 to 90. He had been, like I said, sent north by Ed Schreier to scout for possible candidates when he became the candidate. He was an enthusiastic supporter of Howard Pauley in Pauley's successful bid to succeed Schreier as party leader. In 1981, Cowan was re-elected in general election. As the NDP also won the election, he was appointed Minister of Northern Affairs. He became in charge of environmental management, included the administration of the Clean Environment Act and workers' compensation, which I spoke about a little earlier. He was also in charge of the community's economic development fund. Later, in '83, he was appointed Minister of Cooperative Development and Chairman of the Treasury Board. He continued to serve as Minister of Cooperative Development and was also named the Minister of Native Affairs, responsible for the Natural Gas Supply Act from September.
Order, the member's time has expired. The Honourable Member for McPhillips.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and it's my honor to rise today and put some brief comments on the record in relation to Jay Cowan. Obviously, I can't match the member opposite's knowledge base of Mr. Cowan, but I think it's important that we all take time to remember somebody that has had such a profound influence on the lives of Manitobans and Canadians alike, and more importantly, has dedicated some 4 decades of his life working for the betterment of all Manitobans. After becoming a landed immigrant in Canada in 1974, he quickly became involved in the community. Soon after becoming a Canadian citizen in 1977, Mr. Cowan was elected as a member of the Legislative Assembly for the riding of Churchill. He was re-elected in 1982, 86, and 88, and held various ministerial portfolios in time, including Northern Affairs, Cooperative Development, and Native Affairs. He was also the chair of Treasury Board and was government house leader during his political career. He was an extremely active member of the Manitoba Legislature, and according to others, it was almost impossible to open a newspaper or listen to a local news broadcast and not hear about Jay. There are many reasons to remember and honor Mr. Cowan, but it is important to note the significant role he played in making workplace health a political issue here in the province of Manitoba. As an MLA and the chair of the Manitoba Federation of Labour Workplace Safety and Health Committee, Mr. Cowan raised over $250,000 to open the Manitoba Federation of Labour Occupational Health Centre in 1983, the only second one of its kind here in Canada. Beyond his political career, he continued to have a great impact on others. For many years, with his wife Elaine, he ran an adult education centre that focused on meeting the needs of Indigenous peoples. He truly was an inspirational figure that encouraged and uplifted the lives of many others. Mr. Cowan spent his entire life trying to build a better society and encouraged everyone he knew to do the same. He encouraged kindness, honesty, generosity, and hard work, and believed that everyone has a gift that needs to be shared with the world. His presence will continue to be missed. Let us all continue to honor and remember the world that Mr. Cowan has helped create for all of us to enjoy. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for River Heights.
Madam Speaker, I rise to extend condolences to the family and friends of Jay Cowan, who passed away January 23, 2022. Jay Cowan was a man of great compassion, dedication, and unwavering commitment to public service. Born in July 1946 in Chicago, Illinois, he embarked on a remarkable journey that led him to become a cherished member of our Manitoba and Canadian community. His story is one of resilience and determination. After successfully appealing his conscription into American military forces, he came to Canada in 1974 and embraced our country. He worked tirelessly, taking on various roles, including a logger in the Maritimes, a snow shoveler in Montreal, and a miner in Lynn Lake, showing his work ethic and his adaptability. In 1977, he became a Canadian citizen and the New Democratic candidate for the Churchill constituency. His dedication to public service shone through. He was elected in 1982, in 86, and 88. And throughout his political career, he held ministerial portfolios in the Poly government, including Northern Affairs, Cooperative Development, and Native Affairs. He was also chair of the Treasury Board and Government House Leader. He had a focus on mine safety and indeed on worker safety more generally. His commitment to community service went beyond his political endeavors. He was involved in promoting adult education. He worked collaboratively with various organizations and governments, First Nation, Métis, Inuit, federal, provincial, and municipal entities, as well as private sector, nonprofit, non-government, and labor organizations across Canada. His tireless efforts and dedication to building bridges and fostering understanding among diverse groups showcased his inclusion and egalitarian values. He dedicated himself to creating a better society for all, encouraging kindness, honesty, generosity, and hard work. He believed that everyone possesses gifts that they can be shared with the world, and he inspired countless others to embrace this philosophy. As we mourn the passing of Jay Cowan, let us remember his unwavering commitment to building a better society, and let us honor his memory by carrying forward the work that he did. Thank you.
Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt this motion? Would honourable members please rise and remain standing to indicate their support for the motion? The hour being past 5 p.m., this House is adjourned and stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow. And I would just indicate that this beautiful bouquet before us today is in honor of our colleagues who have passed. And I would invite each of you to take a flower with you if you want, and if you don't want it yourself, to pass it on to somebody else in an act of kindness.